Hey everybody, this is Silver Spook, and this is the Silver Spook video about Dungeons and Dragons: Honor Among Thieves, the movie, and Dragony Heists, gender hacking, gender role hacking, and spellbinding spectacle. So, uh, and also stealing from the rich, and as well, why Hollywood needs writers. Uh, Despite their uh, failure to pay them what they're worth, as you probably know. We'll get to that. That'll kind of come a little bit later. But to start with Dungeons and Dragons, yeah, first, I think you should you could just watch I think it just came to streaming, if I'm not mistaken. Let me just check that out. So, Dungeons and Dragons, I think it just came to streaming, so you can now watch it without going to the theater if you don't want to do that. Yeah, I think it's like a few days ago. Netflix. How to watch Dungeons and Dragons? Yeah, I think it just came out, so you can stream it right now if you want to watch it. We have it on Plex. We have access to a Plex version of it, but it's what do we say about that? I don't know. I think the first thing that people should know is that it's definitely something that Holly and I enjoyed watching a lot. We don't always enjoy everything that we watch. I would say, like, because the way that I kind of think about things is, I kind of like when it comes to especially like fantasy sorts of movies. I've talked about like Lord of the Rings. I've talked about like a lot of those short sorts of what was the other one recently? The Sandman. I guess that's kind of in the fantasy area. And like the movies like Thor, because Thor, the first two, the original Thor movie, and then Thor, the second one before, not Ragnarok, the Ragnarok, and then Love and Thunder were definitely better. But some of the earlier fantasy-ish Thor movies kind of fell into this trap of being a little too serious for their own good. And Dungeons and Dragons is definitely not in that camp. It's in the Ragnarok. It's in the Guardians of the. I know Guardians of the Galaxy just came out as well. The Volume 3. Definitely. 1 and 2 were very much. They're fun sci-fi fantasy movies that are also like very comedic, and I think that that's a better direction to go in for a lot of these sorts of movies. For a lot of reasons. I'll probably come back to that. I have a video about that. I think it was Gremlins 2 and why over the top comedy for action and fantasy movies is often a better direction. Anyway, let me get back to Dungeons and Dragons. So if you don't know, Dungeons and Dragons, of course, stars Chris Pine. It does star Michelle Rodriguez doing a lot of butt kicking or axing and hammering and throwing of sledgehammers and most of the fighting actually. And Michelle Rodriguez Michelle Rodriguez is the femme John Wick. You know what I'm saying? Like, does all the action. And Michelle Rodriguez has done a lot. If you ever watch, all the way back to the first Fast and the Furious, she fights Ronda Rousey in one of her movies. But she's kind of like known for that. She does a really good job at that. Chris Pine is, he just does a good job. We'll get to what he actually does. Hugh Grant is a smarmy, feces eating grinned, chuckle F word. I'm trying to not swear. Hugh Grant should play King. Hugh Grant should just play King Charles, and I mean not just like in BBC original series. I mean, he should just like be King Charles. He'd probably do a better job than any multi-billionaire capitalist plus feudal Anglo-Saxon royalty plus colonizer in chief. Hugh Grant would do a better job, I think, than any of these people. And he'd make a mockery of the British monarchy, which it deserves. And so, anyways, speaking of stealing from the rich, sorry, I just kind of went off on that. But Hugh Grant, he does a really good job of like playing a really terrible, tyrannical uh, sleazy, money grubbing political leader is definitely like he's definitely. I think Hugh Grant is really drawing from his his home country's political system and political leaders. I really think that's what he's drawing on. Anyway, but anyways, all of that aside, this is not we're not in that yet. We're not there yet. Let's just jump to the next person. I don't actually know. I don't know all of the other stars, but they all do a good job. And you can look them up though. This is not. I'm not your virtual assistant. Chat GPT plus Meet Tuber, not VTuber, IMDb reading voice. That's not what I'm here to do. But you can look up those people if you want to find out who they are. Holly knows, I'm sure. But yeah, they all do. Everybody like does. I think all the cast is really strong. All the writing is really strong. All the writing is really funny, and it's like as some reviewers have pointed out, like the balance between like character development and then moving the plot forward, and witty, comedic retorts and comic relief, but not like so much that it's really overly snarky. It's not quite like Joss Whedon stuff. He doesn't actually write a lot of his stuff. He has underpaid women do a lot of his work for him. When he had jobs, and then there's it wasn't a garbage boy, or he always was, but he wasn't out yet, outed as it. But anyways, it's kind of like all the writing in the movie is very much like well balanced, and none of it gets like too. It's not like too. I was gonna say heavy handed, but I mean I'm somebody who is of the opinion that there can be never too much ham in the fist. You could put 25 pigs in your fist and then hit someone over the head with it. That's just the Silver Spook school of rock. I mean, the Silver Spook school of writing. But anyways, the writing is very entertaining, and also that's a quick PSA. So we support the Writers Guild of America and all of the underpaid, chronically abused, disregarded writers, many of whom are literally in the red, in debt, have to use credit cards to go to hotels they can't afford, among lots of other things. And Dante Basco, he's not even a writer. He's like a well-known actor in some of the most beloved series like Avatar, and he's paid 75 cents for some of his residual roles. This is just, it is criminally terrible what the corporate capitalist entertainment world has done to its producers and the workers who produce the content. I hate that word. The workers who produce the art and the entertainment that people and the spectacles that people enjoy on TV, in their cinema, in their video games as well. Everyone should just all go on strike. Just all the game writers, everyone's just all go on strike. Just go on strike until there's no more entertainment industry, and then reform it as all cooperative anti-capitalist entities. But anyways, that's me being putting all the hams in my fist. But anyways, Dragon Heists. So there's lots of dragons in Dungeons and Dragons, which is nice. There's a really large dragon, which is very interesting. That was actually one of the funnier parts. There's a really big. Let's just say the dragon is grown so big that he like has to break through the cave opening. He's a really fat dragon, and he has to like bust through Kool-Aid Man style through the opening of his cave. Let me see if I can find a picture of that. It's actually pretty funny. And it's because in movies you'll have like, oh wow, that's really cool special effects. It'll usually be something like, yeah, this guy, Thumber Child, a massive backstory. So in the game, actually, I guess he has a huge backstory, and he just kind of slides on his ponderous belly down the inside of this lava pool and huge underground cavern world that he lives in, and he's like sliding down, chasing Chris Pine and friends. It's hilarious. I was like, hey, what's up, Della? Long time no see in the YouTube chat anyway. And Victor and Big Tio, I saw. Yeah, thanks everybody for dropping in there. I'm just kind of going off right now, but So the dragon is actually very much a it's like kind of like symbolic of the tone of the movie, which is you have really it's like the CG is well done. There's also lots of practical effects, so it's nice to see it's not just all CG. And the characters, you get the sense that the actors have like some there when they were creating this show to go off of. You can tell kind of shows where they have like way too much CG, and it's very like non theater drama. I was gonna say liberal arts, but basically like writing, acting, story. It's not you get the sense when it's non artist and storyteller based and driven, because it's you have actors who like are looking in the wrong places. It's probably because they didn't have the golf ball in the right place, or they didn't have any green golf ball when they were in the green screen room. So people are talking to the dragons. Like Holly pointed out, like this, you can see it in some of the Star Wars prequels where Obi-Wan is like talking to the chest of a alien when the eyes are up there, and just like disconnection from a lot of the characters. But you don't really get that sense. There is CG because you have dragons, you've got zombies, you've got undead warriors, you've got that they have to bring back to life. You've got displacer beasts. I remember me and the kids play Dungeons and Dragons, the 90s, plyboard sided arcade game, not on a plyboard sided arcade box, but on our emulatedgames.com. What was it? And we play. We all gather around one keyboard, and one of the mini spooks takes the WACD. I'm IJKL, and the other one is the direction buttons, and we all play Dungeons and Dragons. We've done that several times on the game night. That's our Dungeons and Dragons. That's our Dungeons and Dragons game night. Mostly video games, because that's the kind of stuff that we usually do. But Dungeons and Dragons was the original game that a lot of video games were later on based on. It came out of. I think who is it? I think Warren Spector even said like everyone owes all the games that have ever been made. Certainly in the last 60 years. I mean, the gaming industry to the two Dungeons and Dragons dudes. Anyways, random aside. You still haven't watched the D&D movie? Well, I do recommend. I do, as I said in the beginning. I do. If you're like Silver Spook, I just want to know if I should watch it or not. Then I'm out of here. Number one, please don't just be out of it. You're making me look like I don't know what I'm talking about. But number two, you should. I give it. I give it to like 9-inch nail size dragon claws up. You know what I'm saying? I give it at least 2. I don't know. I have more than that. Actually, I got at least 5. Well, they're not quite 9 inches, but anyways, I would definitely watch it if you want something fun and entertaining and comedic and not incredibly grating like some movies can be nowadays. But yeah, so there's dragons, the dragony heist. I mean, one thing that I think was interesting is I was thinking about it and I was like, oh, it makes sense. Why, all the cyberpunk heists, are, because I do a lot of cyberpunk. It's a science fiction genre, but it's basically, the characters and, again, if you want the plot and the story, you can watch someone else's video for that. I talk around in a variety of different directions about things that branch out from movies, but the basic plot is that you have Chris Pine's character is a harper who plays, of all things, the lute, which is not a harp. So that I'm gonna be like the character second from the left and just be like, that is an inaccurate representation of your name. You should play the harp, not the lute. The second guy is really funny because he's like the ultra serious dude who doesn't know any colloquialisms. What was it? Like somebody says like, and part of it is because he's like 200 years old or something, and like he hasn't kept up with modern parlance. So someone says like, oh yeah, he was the real son of a bitch, and the guy's like, was it? So do you blame his shortcomings on his mother? And it's like, that part is hilarious. But anyways, so Mr. Harper Yeah, they got that. There's lots of jokes like that. Like the 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 characters are playing really over the top versions of themselves. Um, Especially Hugh Grant, definitely, and that guy, he's like the super serious, Mr. Dark. Dark. He's actually tall, dark, and handsome. I do appreciate that. Mr. Tall, Dark, and Handsome is actually a not white person. That's really nice. Number two from the left. I don't know his name. Mr. Sword Holding Man. Mr. Sword Holding Man, and I don't understand. And then he said constantly giving out like, the in the ancient archaic land of Icewind Dale, where in the Neverwinter nights, I once met a wise, once met a wise, sage wizard, and he told me this advice. And then Chris Pine's like, I don't need your sage advice. He's really, because the guy, he's really good at sword fighting. He has like magic lightning ultima. He has magic lightning swords, Ultima Blast. I don't know what exactly his magic is. I'm not that much of a D&D nerd to know. And then he's got like, he has lots of knowledge about lots of things, historically especially. Has access to key MacGuffins that you need to complete the side quest, to complete the peripheral quest, to complete the tertiary quest, to complete the secondary quest, to finally complete the quest, because these things have to be very round and about, so that you can go through all the dungeons, fight all the dragons, gather all the loot, and say hi to and romance all the romanceable 2-foot tall Bradley Coopers, which is a thing that happens in the show. He's a halfling elf. Bradley Cooper is trying to romance the buff ass kicking Michelle Rodriguez. I think is it half orc? I'm not sure, but it's hilarious. It's very good. Also, that's the gender hacking part. Anyways, he's literally 2 feet tall. Bradley Cooper is like holding Michelle Rodriguez's hand, and his hand looks like an infant's hand in her hand, and it's funny. But it's also like it's funny and touching. It's tunny or futching. It sounds too close to the F word. Anyways, it's funny and touching at the same time. Anyway, so Mr. So there's dragons. There's Chris Pine. Before I derailed myself into a serial derailing, not unlike an American Norfolk Southern. I was gonna say Northrop Grumman, but Northrop Grumman blowing up Norfolk Southern trains is also funny. Anyways, I just derailed myself again. Chris Pine is leading a group of I was gonna say unlikely posse, but it's not. They're it's Dungeons and Dragons. You have your rogue, you got your warrior, you got your sorcerer on the left. You got your I guess Chris Pine is the one. He's like, what are you? I'm the bard. No. His thing is, I'm the guy that makes the plans. I'm the plan man. I'm the man with the plan. And he's like, and he's like, our plan is to get into this building, using this helmet of disenchanting everything +5 or something, and that will disenchant the unbreakable enchantment. And he's like, but if that fails, then I'll make another plan. And then the tiefling character, which is the tiefling D&D movie, is the druid character that I think tiefling is half demon, is it not? I just recently did a stream about this game heated, because I was like cosplaying the half demon character, but tiefling, what is that? Let me just Silver Spook has OCD on stream segment. What is it? Because I gotta look this up. Primarily human in ancestry, but draw part of their bloodline from a powerful evil extraplanar being. Tiefling was first applied to all humans whose ancestry included an evil extraplanar being of lower planes, such as a demon, devil. Okay, so it is it is a half demon. Okay. Anyways, random fantasy nerd shit aside. So this character plays one of those half lower planar beings that does come into some Mr. Ancient and Mr. Ancient and ultra serious, right? He actually brings that up. Um, second from the, I keep calling him second from the left, but you know that guy with the sword. What is his name? I can't remember. Holly will possibly remember for me at some point in the middle of my next sentence. But he's what's his name? That's what it is. It's like Chink Week. It's like Chink Uyghur, but like less liberal and in a bad place. You know, like he's just some guy in a fantasy movie. But anyways, Zank. It's Xenk. Yeah, I remember reading that on the screen now. I was like, what? How do you read that? Anyways, so Zank is very interestingly named character who is also very serious. Brings up the fact that there are, when people die, like somebody dies or is going to die, and he says like, or is no, it's already passed away. I'm not gonna say who for the plot reasons, but somebody has passed away, and Zank is like, and there's a possibility of reviving that person from the dead and bringing them back to life, and Zank says, you know, if you were to resurrect this person, perhaps you will be interrupting their new life. You know, because death is I was gonna say death is the road to awe, but that's a song from The Fountain starring Hugh Jackman. Wrong Hugh. This is Hugh Grant. But after death, there is a new life in another plane, right? So they do like kind of drop that in there. That could come up in later, probably if Dungeons and Dragons Honor Among Thieves has more movies in its universe, then that might be something they might explore. Obviously, you know, there's the lower planes where the demons come from. I can't remember all the planes. Is there astral planes? I can't remember the lore exactly. But tieflings are one of these characters, and that are half human and half. And then so this character is a half human, half non-human, who was raised by humans but doesn't really like them. So this character is interesting also because what was this character? Okay, let's see. What is this character's name? Doric. That's the character's name. So Doric's a shape shifting. Is it druid? I can't remember. But Doric has a forearm mounted slingshot that she uses to shoot enemies, soldiers, evil ultra wizardesses in the face with things. And also Doric has horns, obviously, and also can shapeshift into deers, deers and bears and owl bears. I remember you fight in the Dungeons and Dragons game that I played with the kids. Dungeons and Dragons Shadow over Mystara, and then there's also Dungeons and Dragons Tower of Doom, which has Hugh Grant as the final boss, the Lich King. No, this is the '90s game. I'm sure Della has probably played this one. But yeah, there's the owlbear, and I remember fighting these things, and the owlbear character, the owlbears, look basically in the D&D movie like what I would expect them to. Like everything, there's like lots of things I'm like, oh, that looks just like this thing in the game. Or was it in Dungeons and Dragons? They also have the Displacer Beast. Yeah, these guys I know because me and the kids are always fighting these. They have like tentacled Venus flytrap squid ends, 2 of them protruding from their backside. They have 6 legs and kind of like leopard / lion-y heads. They're like 6-legged cat Cthulhu things, and then they can doppelgang themselves, and one of them is the false one, and that actually is a major plot part when they're going through this maze, and the Displacer Beast can like duplicate itself, so you don't know which one is the real one. And it's just like I remember like, oh my god, that's just like playing this game. One of them has a badass red dragon girl as the villain. Oh yes, yeah, that's right. The dungeon. This is all just gonna be me and Adela is just gonna be nerding out about retro video games. I'm just gonna start retro video games commentary channel. But I mean those are actually pretty popular on YouTube. But what was that? Dungeons and Dragons. Red. I swear to God, I know her name if I think about it a little bit longer. Red Dragon, Boss Lady. What is her name? Shit. Flame Wing. That's what it is. I would cosplay this character, the human version, because I just wore a red dress recently. Is that Flame Wing? Yeah, that's it. Anyway, so there is a giant dragon, but the giant dragon is much larger. We're not fat shaming the dragon. The dragon is just a lot large. It's kind of like this dragon, but it's a lot let's say large. So it's just a bigger dragon. It's a Dungeons and Dragons red dragon flaming human form. I'm trying to find the character. Okay. No, I must be off. If somebody knows what that character's name is, you tell me what it is. Yeah, exactly. It's a thicker dragon. This other dragon is just not eating enough. You know, the dragon in Dungeons and Dragons Shadow of Mystara, is just it's just not eating enough. You know why? It's because too many adventurers, they come through, right? They just like they try to slay the dragon, and then they just kind of like run away. They keep hitting the flee button, instead of like completing the quest. They run away and they take the easy route, and so the dragon is not eating any adventurers. The dragon is low on D&D protagonist vitamin P. P is for protagonist. It's supposed to be eating more knights in shining armor. So the dragon is low on iron. I think that armor and mithril is high in iron, right? So, anyways, I'm just being silly. But anyways, so I'm gonna stop going off on all these sides and come back to it. But there is dragons. If you've never played D&D, I think some people have probably, the average person on the stream has probably heard of at least, and probably has played something in D&D. So if you did play D&D, there's a lot to connect to. There's a displacer beast. Oh, there's that the chest. I remember like when we were also playing in Dungeons and Dragons, the chest trap, chest with a mouth. I don't know what it's called. You know what I'm talking about? Yeah, this thing. So there is a chest, the treasure chest. You go to open it, and like a giant mouth opens up with nasty, sharp, horrible, pointy teeth, much worse than the Monty Python in the Search for the Holy Grail rabbit teeth. These are much sharper than those teeth. Although the rabbit does have incredibly sharp teeth. Speaking of fantasy franchises, but this chest's teeth opens up and it chases characters around, and it's pretty funny. I remember having those trap chests in the Dungeons and Dragons game. So if you like, oh, I just want to see all of my favorite things from Dungeons and Dragons, this has like a lot of that stuff in it. It's got the dragons, it's got the trap chest. What else was there? I'm trying to think of specific things. It has like unending hordes of enemies, soldiers of various kinds. It has they have to fight. Michelle Rodriguez does a lot of the fighting, like I said, but they all do fighting at some point. The ending of, what was that? Dungeons and Dragons Tower of Doom. There was that Lich guy at the very end. There's a character that's very much like I don't know what the character's name is, but there's a character that's very much like the Lord Deimos. I don't know, is it Lord Deimos? I don't think it is Lord Deimos, but there's a character, Lord Deimos, in the Dungeons and Dragons Tower of Doom. And there's a character kind of like that. I think that character is almost like he's like the Thanos-y or Loki-like character. It's kind of like always kind of in the I could see like how if they wanted to have a long series of Dungeons and Dragons movies, with each movie like building and adding little characters in and like kind of dovetailing off in a Avengers-esque sort of sense, or Guardians of the Galaxy, even like trilogy sort of sense. There's this one character that he enters and then kind of exits, and he has another very interesting name that has a lot of silent consonants. You know what I'm saying? And I can't remember what it was. It's like Zaz. It's like Zaz Kalamazaz or something like that. It's like it's got a lot of interesting consonant clusters, you know, like zinc. You put X's in things and they sound cooler. I mean, speaking of writers' strikes, you know, I'm not on strike because Silver Spoon Games is a cooperative and an anti-capitalist, indigenous-run, anti-imperialist cooperative at that. But as a writer of science fiction and fantasy, like I you know, I do appreciate all of these the time and painstaking effort it takes to find a non-existent cluster of consonants like X, Z, P, H, T, and then make it sound not ridiculous and not plagiarism, and put them into your movie, you know, or into your book. So you know, I appreciate that. Anyways, so we played. Are you talking about playing Dungeons and Dragons? You know, yes. Are you playing Risk? Oh, Risk is another game that is on a board, not unlike some Dungeons and Dragons. Well, I think tabletop is slightly. Anyways, Dungeons and Dragons Tower of Doom. But long story short, there is a character that's kind of like this character. What is his? Holly, do you know what his name is? That character that Dungeons and Dragons movie Lord guy. What is that guy's name? Zas. It's like Zas Tam. That's what it is. You know what? You know what? Dungeons and Dragons villains names. You know what that's like? It's like Ben Schwartz on Jake and Amir coming up with a name. Oh, you want to know my name? Somebody you've never met before, and you're asking his name. My name is Zaz Tam. Only Holly will get that joke, but it's okay. Zaz Tam is Vecna. No, he just has tentacles coming out of his body. Is that? No, it's not Vecna. It kind of looks like Vecna a little bit. Okay, I guess that's what he looks like in some of the books. He looks like what is the Zastam? Let me just look it up. Zastam appears in 2 scenes and is portrayed by Scottish actor. Zastam is the most powerful of a group of 8 Zulkirs or wizards who rule the country of Thay. He is the Zulkir of the school of necromancy. Tam is a lich. He is a lich. See, I got it right. See, I'm not the best Dungeons and Dragons expert, but I was like, that guy, he's very lichy. You know what I'm saying? He's very lichy, and by that I mean he kind of looks like Henry Kissinger, like hybridized with Joseph Biden. You know, just like an unbelievably creepy, horrific, skeletal figure that is hell bent on destroying everyone and everything, and you know, keeping them under his power, and like looks like 200-year-old ball sack face. Anyways, you know, so I was like, you have a very lichy quality. You know, it's like when you have a lichy quality, you know, you have a very Biden-esque quality. You know, you have a very Koch family, Koch brother quality to you. You know, very cokey. It's very Angloid imperial ruler quality to it, you know. But he actually very much is. He's very much like the character in this movie. Zastam is, you know, he's literally trying to rule the world. You know, he's like somebody who works in a think tank in DC. You know, he's like Tony Blinken. You know, Tony Blinken. You know, when he takes off his Star Wars senator face, he becomes Emperor Palpatine, you know, like his leader Brzezinski and all those, and Wolfowitz. So like Zastam is somebody who is a member of the group of 8 wizards who rule this country of Thay. He is the Zulkir of the school of necromancy. He is the ruler of Thaymon. However, rumor says that Zast is under the command of Larlock Worker. So you know, it's very like Saruman is under command of Sauron, and then there's another, Sar baby is another puppet of the Saruman, and then under that is like the Sar infant, and you know, there's like puppets of puppets of puppets. You know, it's like in Star Wars there are always 2, right? And there's like, you know, there's like this kind of like, it's weird. There's a lot of echoes always in science fiction and fantasy of this kind of the evil mastermind. There's always one, and then everything kind of spreads out like it's almost like the way that capitalist West depicts communism, you know, it's like, and socialism is just like this kind of spreading tentacles that go everywhere from one person. All the tentacles spread. There's always one, right? One evil ruler of an authoritarian, despotic, non-Western place, and I just, you know, that's Silver Spook doing a little Silver Spook aside for you, but the Lich King is Zastam, and he is controlling, or not controlling. He is this Lich evil wizard that is like I think was Sauron a wizard, very powerful, magical, supernatural entity. He is trying to take over the rest of the world. He controls the area of that's called Thay. Thay is very Mordor like, right? So Thay is like Mordor. Actually, wait, no. Thay in Dungeons and Dragons. And it is Thay is Mordor like because Lord of the Rings came before, right? Middle Earth came long before Dungeons and Dragons. Dungeons and Dragons is just like a role-playing game, kind of inspired largely by, you know, Tolkien writing and other fantasy that followed. And so the Thay people are the people that come from, and they're in the rest of the world. They're believed to be very evil and terrible, and fallen and bad and malicious. And they did kill Chris Pine's wife in the movie Dungeons and Dragons. And this character is one of the chief primary antagonists in the movie. That she is not the Lich King, but she is someone who, she's like the Saruman. She's the Saruman to the Zastam Sauron, right? And so her character is doing most of the acting. She's working with the smarmy, rich, grifter, British PM, the British PM transposed into a Dungeons and Dragons universe that is Hugh Grant's character. What is his name? Forge is his name. And then this character is fighting owlbears at different points. Is the most powerful character in this show that is on the screen. And it's from this place called the Thay, which is, it's very, I want a picture of the Thay Dungeons and Dragons world, like where they are from, the land. Because the land, when you look at it, it's very Mordor looking, which Vecna's place in the Stranger Things underground, underside, underworld. What is it called? Underverse? Shadow World? Shadow Side? Under Shadowverse? The butthole. I can't remember what the underground part of Stranger Things is called. But anyways, so in the Thay's area, it's all dark and it's black and red, and there's like cinder and ash, and everything sucks, right? No, everything is just metal. It doesn't suck. It's just metal as fuck. That's all it is. Hashtag Thay did nothing wrong until evil, nasty imperialists showed up and tried to, illegally occupied their country, put in a false so-called democracy in charge, and then proceeded to subjugate and brainwash everyone into joining their empire. I'm not talking about Hawaii. I'm talking about the indigenous people from the place called Thay. Anyways, so the Thay are, I can't find a picture of their place. Why can't I find it? Okay. Okay, I might not be able to find it. That's okay. Zank, memory. Oh, what was that? What was that thing called? It's called the red something. There's that magic spell that they used to brainwash everyone. Yeah, here he is. Anyways, I'm gonna stop playing this game. But you know, the place that they're from, it looks a lot like Mordor. You know, in the sense that it's black and red and everything is bad. And I have like feelings about that. You know, let me just get a picture of Mordor, right? So Mordor is this place, a black volcanic plain in the southeast of Middle Earth, east of Gondor, blah 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 blah. The good place where all the humans live is green and white and, you know, Euro all over, and it's, you know, it's kind of annoying actually, because it's like, you know, I mean, why do evil eyes and evil sorcerers always got to come from the red and black place? I guess somebody has to be the bad guy, but Anyway, I won't go too far off on that. We'll come back to it later. But the Thay place kind of looks like that. But I do appreciate that at least it looks kind of like this, right? So it's got like volcanic mountains. You've got the sky is always black because it just everything's on fire, because when things are on fire, it's bad, and volcanoes are bad. I've been very offended by that because I'm from a volcanic island, and the volcano. It's. I think if indigenous people, if we start making more of our own fantasy stuff, a lot of things will be recontextualized, because the volcano is not necessarily bad. It is dangerous, but not necessarily bad. But in the Dungeons and Dragons movie, I do feel like, I'll take this one and I'll go off on a little tangent. In the Middle Earth universe, right, which was written by J.R.R. Tolkien, right, and is of course the mainstay, the flagship of Western Euro fantasy, and by extension a lot of global fantasy because of history. In Middle Earth, as I've talked about in previous videos, so if you want to check some of those out, I have a couple on Dungeons and Dragons from last year. I have a couple on the Lord of the Rings from last year. Where did I do those? I think it was around. Yeah, Rings of Power. I have at least one or two about Lord of the Rings. And one of the things that obviously when it comes to Lord of the Rings, one of the positive things was that there were non-white characters. There were black dwarves. There were brown elves. There were et cetera, and that pissed off a lot of let's say racist people basically. But Lord of the Rings, generally speaking, right, it kind of comes from a place where the elves and the humans, well, certainly the elves, right, which come from Linden. It's also very much like the elves are pure and good, and there are races that are good. Like they're just, as a race, they're like biologically good, better, not fallen. And then there are the races that are just fundamentally inherently bad. So those are like the orcs and the dwarves, the goblins. They're just evil because why? Not because of anything. They just are. Period. They're just evil. We have to kill them, and they just want to do evil things to us. We the good people from the good people from Britain are good, and everyone too far east are bad. That's basically what it is, because it came from a colonial world and a guy who was living and raised in a racist colonial reality in Europe, when Europe was committing planetary atrocities to everyone else and stealing their wealth and then blaming it on, well, they're just bad, they're evil. So so the fantasy, that's like a problem that comes up in a lot of Eurocentric fantasy, is that it continues that legacy, and a lot of people have commented and made YouTube videos about this sort of thing. But so I don't want to spend too much time on it, but it's important to bring up. And so whenever there's fantasy, it's kind of like how is the to my mind, right, as an indigenous Native Hawaiian non-white person from the U.S. illegal occupied country of Hawaii, right, under white supremacy and imperialism and colonialism, right, that's having our language still being punished for when children speak it. We're being displaced. The U.S. just passed is going to use the government, U.S. government in Hawaii is going to, under the guise of helping homeless people, is going to be mass deporting Native Hawaiians from Hawaii. I don't know if you know about this. Hundreds of thousands of dollars in airfare is going to be spent taking Hawaiians, because we're the majority of the homeless population, and then sending us off to Las Vegas or somewhere else to get us out of our country. So the U.S. is committing ongoing genocide in Hawaii. So it does matter. Like how are you depicting, non-Euro ethnicities in your fantasy and everywhere else? So in the Dungeons and Dragons movie, when it does come up, right? What is Mordor, right? Like, is Mordor bad? Are the people that are bad people just bad, right? There's no actual orcs, right? So let me get some of the Thayans. So actually, the second from the left, right, Mr. Zank I have a sword and I'm magical, but I'm really bad at talking to people. He is a Thean. He's also not a white guy. It's much less like that in this movie. It's very much expanse like sci-fi fantasy where there's white, black, and brown and Asian of all people, and the differences are all ethnic. There's none of the but the Thean, there's eagle people, there's tiger people, there's cat people that have. There's a fish with a cat that comes out of it. There's fish people, cat is everyone, And so that's not really. It's very. I call it. I kind of think of that as like expansification of the sci-fi fantasy race realities of race, which is just kind of sidestepping a lot of that, which is whatever, right? Because you're not trying to deal with that. There's, anyway. So Chris Pine's wife is, black, etc. in the movie. But the Thans are thought of as like another people, right? They're like the Eastern people, right? They're very Eastern coded. The names sound like Afro-Asiatic names. Let's be like, that's basically what it's they're like different from the Western more European people. And the European people that have black actors and Hispanic actors like Michelle Rodriguez and the guy on the left. But they're like they all speak in a American or British way. Their names, they have names like Jarnathan, which is funny, and there's, Michelle Rodriguez's name is Holga. So Michelle Rodriguez's character, it's obviously, a lot of the names are like, you take a name and then you throw a vowel into it. You change the vowel. Like there's a character called Jarnathan, which is hilarious. He's like, people keep trying to escape from their prison on the there's this one guard who is also a bird, and you throw him out the window, and then you can get him to help you you can get him to help you as like a living parachute. It's fucking hilarious. Anyways, but Jarnathan is Jonathan with an R, right? And then there's like Edgin is like Edwin, but you switch the W with a G, and then there's Holga, which is like Helga with a O in it, right? But so Michelle Rodriguez's character is kind of like a Viking-esque character, obviously Helga, and then is also the warrior, and so, but they're all, so then, and of course, I mean, there's no Mexico. I forget Michelle Rodriguez's actual nationality. There's no Mexico there. There's no and the kid, the black kid on the left, he's just like a British accented, British coded, some kind of Anglo-Saxony accented, but like somebody who is obviously black coded person. So he's very much, in the Western Occident coded people. All the main the Chris Pine's character, he's American. He's just kind of like fused into. He talks like Chris Pine, right? So they're kind of fused into the Anglo-Saxon world. But then there's the Eastern people that like sound different. They speak a different language. Like they can speak the Western language, but they have a different ethnicity. They have a different culture. So it's kind of like, how do you, and anyway, so where am I going with that? The way in which the fantasy, like, number one, deals with the different races is one thing. And Lord of the Rings, again, so the Lord of the Rings, I do think it's positive that they just went, well, there's black dwarves because this whole thing is fantasy, and that's one way to go with it. And I honestly, I can see why you do that. I mean, because it's all fantasy, and the original fantasy was written by a guy, J.R.R. Tolkien, who was a racist colonialist because he was raised in a racist colonialist Britain and United Kingdom. And his stuff, and he sold books to other racist colonialist people in a racist colonial system, and it was completely unexamined. It's like pre-1950s. Not that the United States is doing, and the West is doing really great now. I don't know if you've heard of people being murdered, and everyone cheering it on, like a black guy just got murdered in New York City public transit, and everyone's celebrating it. So that's not like that's over. But my point is that, like, if you don't want to deal with those issues of actual the real world racism and colonialism, then it's, because it's like
don't even go there. You know, just don't go there, and just especially in fantasy. This is just fantasy. The thing I don't like about Expanse is that it tries to talk about the race stuff, but it kind of like just completely sidesteps all that. So like don't even try. It's like, are you 250-year-old white Gen Xers dudes in a privileged position? Don't even try to talk about that shit. You know, just let Jordan Peele or someone else do it. You know what I'm saying? You know, if Taika wants to handle that, you know, and Jordan Peele, you want to handle that, you know, you know, if Eddie Murphy wants to handle that in Coming to America 3, you know, let them do it. Don't try to, I mean, you know what I'm saying? Anyways, let me get back to the point. So then the way that the Fae are presented is, I think it's different from Lord of the Rings. And I know this is like a long-winded point that I'm going on, but I do think it's important, as the person who makes the political games and writes the political stuff, like Neofeud and Terminus Machina and Neofeud 2. I do think it's important that like the way that the different people from a different place are represented they're not represented as like they are biologically inherently evil, right? Because when you do that, as I said in the Lord of the Rings video, that kind of lends credence to eugenicist, fascist, colonialist ways of thinking, fraudulent science, really. Because, right, scientifically, there's nothing evil in African DNA or in peoples of Asia's DNA and their biology, right? But that is deep in the history of the Western world to justify 500 years of colonialism, slavery, and the whole planet being subjugated under the barrel of British, Spanish, and French guns. You know what I'm saying? And so the genetic inferiority and evilness of African, Asian, Pacific Islander, savage Native Americans is inseparable from Western history and, by extension, Western fantasy. And so, like, trying to counter that narrative, even though you're making movies based on entertainment writing and franchises that were rooted in that, is like an important, I think it, I'm just saying, like, that's something that I think is like, we should do more of that and less of just trying to do literally what's in Lord of the Rings. Because literally, when I remember watching Lord of the Rings, I was like, this is really messed up. Why are all of the people that are orcs and goblins just fallen people because they're fallen, and we should just kill them all? That's like pro-fascist, pro-colonialist thinking that has to, it only, like, they literally call orc, that's what they call people that were communists. They were just called orcs. People that were not European in European wars historically were literally called orcs. They're still called them orcs. They're still called orcs by fascists today. Like, when they kill Asians and people identified as not European enough in Western Europe, they're called orcs, and then they're murdered, and then they're genocided. So it actually has a real, right at this very second, impact how that is dealt with. And also it lets the people of Britain and France and all of the colonies, like the Five Eyes, excuse their behavior. I'm not saying that like directly because people play Lord of the Rings or watch Lord of the Rings, that's going to make them support fascist, imperialist policies, but it's part of a total milieu, a total culture, a total zeitgeist, a total consensus reality, that lends itself in that direction. Anyway, I just keep going off about this. This is not fun dragon heist bullshit. So that's the end of that. But and so let me come back into the Dungeons and Dragons story. So the way that comes up, right, is that the dragon is that the Zank, right? So Chris Pine's character, let me come back a little bit. So Chris Pine's character, and his name is what the hell? I can never remember people's names. I'm so terrible with names. I remember all their faces, but what's his name? Edgin. That's the guy. He's the guy who is Edwin with a G. So Edwin with a G. So we've got Helga with an O, Edwin with a G. We've got Cenk with an X, and then we've got George with an F. That's Forge on the right. He's King George. Anyways, so Edgin's character, Chris Pine's character, his wife is killed. His wife in the backstory, in the flashback, was killed by these evil, nasty Fae people, right? And like, he really doesn't like them. He hates them, and he doesn't want to. When he hears they might have to work with a Fae person, right, or the other person that's from the other country, right? I recently did a video about Shadow and Bone. It's kind of like the I can't remember, but there's an Eastern coded Asian people in Darwin as well, or they're like, I think it's Southern, but it's basically, anything south or too east from Europe is other, and so it's alien. And so the Thay character, and so when Chris Pine's character Edgin hears that he has to work with the Thay character, he's like, oh no, I absolutely not. I will not be around that guy. They're all terrible. He kind of has a racist attitude, I mean, it's not like he doesn't have any kind of reason to be wary of them because they did kill his wife, but also they're all just evil. And on the one hand, in the movie, there is like, some later justification, not justification, but there's a reason why a lot of Thay people are doing bad things. And later on, you kind of learn through Zank, right, that not all the Thay people, not all the Thay people were simply evil, but that the Lich, right? So we're coming back to Mr. Magical Evil Skeleton Man, right? So not Deimos from the Tower of Doom, Zaz-Tam from the Dungeons and Dragons universe is actually the one who let me see a movie. Yeah. So he is the guy who has come into the so he's the guy who has usurped the country of the Fae, used a spell to blast all of this red dust mist stuff. It's a very powerful magic spell that basically anyone who comes into contact with that mist is frost at the mouth and is instantly like brainwashed and under mental mind control of the Zaz-Tam evil Lich Lord guy, right? So he basically coups Mordor. It's kind of like what Mike Pompeo and them, they lie, cheat, and steal and kill and coup everyone around the world, in order to bring them under the control of what U.S. hegemony and the empire, right? So so Zaz-Tam is very America-like, that's why I brought up Henry Kissinger, Joseph Biden, Tony Blinken, Jake Sullivan, Barack Obama. I mean, all of them. Donald Trump. I mean, he's a very descendant of the reigning colonial power, right? His character is hellbent, and is not just satisfied to take all of Thay. Now he's trying to take. It's actually the major plot is that the overarching plot is that this undead Lich Henry Kissinger, Joe Biden's leaseholder sort of character, is trying to take over everything, right? Of course he is, right? Just like Sauron is trying to take over all of Middle Earth, right? Et cetera, et cetera. And so his character is using this brainwashing mist to put everyone under his control. And so that kind of so it gives so unlike in Lord of the Rings, where the goblins and the orcs are just biologically, genetically bad and have to be exterminated by Galadriel. That's like Galadriel is like a SS Waffen, or the modern day version of that would be a Stepan Bandera worshiper, right? On the front lines in a war backed by the United States Red Mist brainwashing coup to install a compliant government in a certain country that is fighting a war on the US's behalf, right? And so Lord of the Rings is very much like people. The people that are being killed, the enemies that are different, are just biologically inferior. They're biologically evil, and plus they killed one of my family members, right? So obviously, if somebody has killed one of your someone in your family, that's terrible, and like you understand why someone would be upset, right? But it goes beyond that. It's kind of like, it's not just because, it's kind of like the black guy who was killed on the subway. Well, poor people and black people are just inferior people, and they deserve to be killed. That's actually the U.S., the New York Times, the New York Post are just saying those people just deserve what they got. It was somebody was being too loud and disruptive on the bus, and then they got what they deserved. That's the way that the U.S. is spinning it in that way, because the U.S. is a fascist country. It's not, which is just colonialism, but in more inside your own place. And so it's actually, how you see how it really matters. Like, how do the entertainment and the movies and the meta narratives and the takeaways, right? What consent is being manufactured anytime you consume any entertainment product, right? And it's kind of like, are the people like inherently bad, or are the people that are being fought? Why is this even happening, right? And so the Fae people are not inherently bad. They're just being brainwashed by a power that has just basically taken them over and is using them as a tool to continue to increase their power and control. And so that gives the Fae people more agency and it stops this kind of like eugenicist, social, fascist, social Darwinist kind of idea that some people are just fundamentally bad. And if we just eliminate every single one of those people from this earth, right? And the West is talking about this right now. They're talking about, we have to ethnically cleanse this region of Europe, Eastern Europe. We have to cleanse it of people. The French are openly talking about it right now on TV. As Richard Madden had a video about it. There's like, we have to just like ethnically cleanse everyone from this one region. I'm not gonna say where. I'll talk more about it maybe later on today. Because they're just terrible people. Like, their language is wrong, their culture is wrong, and if we replace them with the Garden, right, as the NATO foreign, the head of the NATO foreign policy, there's I was gonna say Stephen Burrell, but it's Mr. Burrell from Spain. He says Europe is the garden that has to cleanse the jungle. It has to weed out the jungle from the world, right? That's still the attitude to this very second, right? And so so it really matters, I think, like how that kind of stuff is portrayed in movies. But anyway, I'm going off again about my topic. Yeah, that is a Richard Madden shout. But yeah, so because he did talk about that. But anyway, so Dragony, but that's not really the fun stuff. I know I keep going back to my serious stuff. I should just be talking about video games and displacer beasts, how to fight them, and use a flaming sword of fire on the ice demon, and use a 2 fingers of eye poking on the beholder, who has like 200 eyes. I think there's a beholder in Dungeons and Dragons. I remember that. Anyways, so back to this though. So I think that's important, and the way that the Fae are portrayed is, I think it's better than it could be. So that's good. On the same time, by the same token, Dungeons and Dragons is not it's not on the face of it, like, again, it's not trying to be super. We're trying to say important things. It's just kind of an entertaining movie. But you can't make anything without the underlying inherent politics, like the Ludo narrative in games or the meta narrative in television and film. So I do think I got to bring that up at some point in my videos, because that's what I do that's my special sauce. AI and ChatGPT, the so-called generative AI and ChatGPT don't have any, except stealing writers and artists and actual human laborers' work and then airbrushing it so that some white guy can make a ton of money selling it off as his own through Stable Diffusion and ChatGPT. But I have a special sauce because I am ostensibly at least a human. Anyways, so Dragony Heists. I've already talked about the dragons. Okay, I've talked a little about the Heists. Obviously they're trying to steal, right? They're trying to steal stuff. Chris Pines and the team of the team of valiant and variously skilled heroes, you know, are basically in the beginning doing little runs. They're doing little shadow runs. Almost, yeah. It's all heist based, right? It's like Shadowrun, Cyberpunk 2020, Dungeons and Dragons. It's all basically just heist. It's just like they're adventures, right? They're murder hobos, right? Where you run around the universe, kill everyone, and take all the stuff. Run around all the lands, loot everyone's chest. Final Fantasy, run into some random, you know, Miyazaki house full of nice people's house, you know, where they're having their pots of delicious soup and bacon and eggs and mead, and then you just steal everything out of all the pots, take the books out of all of their libraries, and take all the change from all of their pantries. You know, you just take all their life savings. That's all you do, right? It's the little narrative of role playing games is serial murder and thievery. That's what it is. But you know, anyways, but you know, it's like, so in this Dungeons and Dragons, I mean, it's something you got to bring up, because in this Dungeons and Dragons movie, Chris Pine's character is like, okay, he's fallen on bad times. His wife has died. He's left his the Harpers are apparently noble people. They're like a noble position. They're like lords and ladies and as such in this fantasy world. Chris Pine has played literally Prince Charming multiple times, both in Princess Diaries and then the more comedic Prince Charming. I guess they're all comedic in the Into the Woods movie, where he sings the song Agony with his friend, pining for his feudal girlfriend. And so Chris Pine's character is very comedic, like he's been in recent movies. And I did give a shout out for what was that movie? What was it? Don't Worry, Darling, which he is in as well. I mean, he's much scarier character in that. He's definitely not a comedy character in that, but you know, he does. He's definitely been in a lot of stuff in like a not a shitty way, so that's always good. You know, it's nice to, you can, you know, at least you have some white dudes so that you can go hashtag not all white dudes. No, but Chris Pine's, the movies that he's been in, that he's choosing to be in, and the kind of thing, it's not necessarily that his character is always a good person, right? But like the movies they choose to be in are movies that are like more, not leaning on the side of being shitty and patriarchal, douchebag enabling nonsense. And so his character is a noble, though, who has like no longer a noble. He's trying to make money somehow, and so he finds that, well, if I just smash and grab, basically, like, it's like Dungeons and Dragons says there is no theft against corporations. Dungeons and Dragons, he is doing a lot of like what happened though during the Floyd Rebellion, though, which is like smashing glass windows and taking things of value out of them. It's also called it's called going on a D&D quest. He steals from, and the rules are we never hurt anyone, and we only steal from people who won't even notice very much, right? So he's basically Robin Hood right now. Well, he's not quite Robin Hood at that time, but he's taking from the rich. That's why I said stealing from the rich was part of the Twitter title, right? So he takes from the rich people, right? And then he doesn't kill people. Him and his gang, they don't kill anyone. I think it's him and Holga, him and Michelle Rodriguez kind of are the first two, and then they slowly gather they increase their party size, not unlike playing Final Fantasy 3 or any of them, right? And he is slowly getting more and more until they're building up to bigger and bigger shadow runs and bigger heists, until they get to a potential one that could a potential job that has a what is it called, the Dungeons and Dragons tablet of reawakening. That's what it is. Yeah. So there's a tablet of reawakening in the movie that Chris Pine is like, if we do this job, we can get this tablet of reawakening. as one, and also there's an incredible amount of riches and rewards to be had, right? And so if we're able to do the run, then the loot, one of the pieces of loot will allow me to bring my wife back to life, right? And so he really obviously wants to do that one, right? And so, but then, I won't give you the whole plot, but basically he goes on that one, and then something goes very wrong, and time dilation and time what is, I forget what the spell is called. It's like a time freeze. Something like that happens in Neofeud too. So there's lots of science fiction based magic like that. But basically, he gets frozen and then captured, goes to prison, etc., etc. With Michelle Rodriguez's orc, half orc. I think it's orc. Is it orc? I'm not sure. Gotta go look that up. I'll look it up later. But she has her ears are not humanoid. What is? Let me just look that up real fast. What race is in D&D? Barbarian. Okay. Holga Kilgore, a barbarian who was exiled from Uthgard Elk tribe for marrying an outsider. Oh, she is human, but I swear she has ears that don't look human though. Anyways, so Chris Pine and Chris Pine's character Edgin and Michelle Rodriguez's character Holga get trapped and they get captured, and the party gets split up, et cetera, et cetera. So and the movie kind of begins with them trying to escape the prison they're in. Chris Pine is talking. They kind of say like his job is there's one point where like the tiefling character in the back there, Doric, is like, what exactly do you bring? And I say it's actually used in the trailer. What do you actually like? I get that, on the left in the back there, the blackhead is a sorcerer, and I understand what he's doing. You have the warrior character Holga, who is the badass with the axe and just does all the action stunts, and as I said, is the John Wick of this posse. And then, but what do you do? What exactly do you bring? And he's like, I make the plans, right? So what he does do, like if you were to look at his D&D stat sheet, like the strength, dexterity, intelligence, charisma, what is it, luck, or is that the GURP system from Fallout? I can't remember. Luck, and then wisdom, etc. I forget all the stats. But so Chris Pine's character would probably have his charisma and or intelligence, but his intelligence can't be that high because when they go to the underground dungeon cave system, there's these giant, like, kind of, Holly said they look like giant walking butts, but they're in fact like brains the size of hogs, just kind of walking around, and they supposedly invade and feed upon the minds of unsuspecting victims, and the smarter and more intelligent you are, the more likely they are to try to attack you. And no one gets attacked. They're the brain, these brain vampire butt shaped, these bipedal butt shaped brain suckers just walk right past all of them. So none of their intelligence scores can be higher than a 5, I suppose. And that's pretty funny. And so since the brain guys, they're trying to not get it killed, right? But since the brain vampires walk right past them, and then Chris Pine's like, well, that's just hurtful, because you're saying we're all dumb. But anyways, so Chris Pine's, but he definitely he is somebody who's trying to like be the party leader. He's definitely a charismatic. He doesn't kind of keep the team together. So Chris Pine is, you know what Chris Pine is? Chris Pine is Pinkie Pie in this thing. Okay, he has skills in being the partier. He like plans the party. He keeps everyone, the spirits up. He literally is Pinkie Pie though, because Chris Pine, there's one part where the sorcerer boy is like, I don't know if I can do it, because he has severe anxiety and he has severe self-confidence problems. And Chris Pine's like, well, just keep that to yourself, because you're gonna bring down the group's morale. Not sure that's the best thing, but Chris Pine is always concerned about the group staying together and keeping their morale up. And so Chris Pine is actually Pinkie Pie. That's his. He's not his spirit animal, because that's not a thing that we don't do that. But this is Chris Pine embodies the spirit of the Pinkie Pie unicorn. Chris Pine is literally knitting. He's literally knitting as Michelle Rodriguez's character is breaking the knees of a giant orc, Urukai looking guy, and smashing his head in the prison cell. Chris Pine is knitting mittens, and he's thinking about turning them into fingerless gloves. So he literally is Pinkie Pie. That's who he actually is. Doesn't do a lot of actual fighting. He does put an axe into the mouth of a stone reanimated gargoyle dragon thing. But he doesn't actually do a lot of direct fighting and punching and kicking. He mostly is tricking people. He trips people while being a spy. He he does like a blue cape Toro with a dragon, and then gets himself dragged away very comedically. Usually he tries to fight, does so in a very tricksty way, and then gets himself accidentally embroiled in something. Chris Pine endamsels himself repeatedly. Let's put it that way. When he tries to fight, it's very funny. And so anyway, but he is Pinkie Pie though. That's I'm sticking with that story. Chris Pine's character Edgin in Dungeons and Dragons is Pinkie Pie. He keeps the party going. He keeps the party both when they're partying, like when they're getting down to medieval version of Megan Thee Stallion tracks, and drinking ale, and also the Dungeons and Dragons party in the sense of the group of people engaging on their swashbuckling axe and sword swinging adventures. He keeps the party together. That's what he does. That's what he brings to the table. Not a lot else. Which hashtag hard relate, because sometimes I wear pink. But anyways, also and so that's part of the gender hacking part. Since I haven't talked directly about that, that's one thing I thought was interesting, was that they take character. I think it's a good direction to go in, because you could have had we're gonna have another Clint Eastwood, we're gonna have another Shum White, we're gonna have Chris Pratt, Guardians of the Galaxy, Chris Evans, Captain America, big strong, the white dude leading the team, beating the people up. I was gonna say Chris Pratt, Chris Evans, Chris Downey Jr. Chris Downey Jr. Just the brainy hard punching with my techno Elon Muskian Iron Man suit. Chris Downey Jr. What is it? Chris Schwarzenegger. Chris Schwarzenegger, just a little bit. He's like, I go to CrossFit and I'm just a random white dude protagonist. Chris Stallone. Chris Reeves. You know what I'm saying? No, Chris Pratt, Chris Evans, and what's the last one? Chris Pine, I think it was the third one. So, at least Chris Pine is like breaking the Chris mold. You know what I'm saying? Chris Sylvester Stallone. There's so many Chris's in the world, What are we gonna do? My name is Chris, so it's like it's like you gotta leave me some room, because I'm not even a white dude. So Chris, but his character is like definitely like not the fighter character, He kind of like in average Hollywood movie, in the history of all Hollywood films, in the history of all cinema and all of that, you would expect that he would be the Superman-y sort of fighting. He might also be the planning guy and the fighting guy and the charisma guy and the love interest and all the everything, right? But he's the guy who knits, he makes mittens, he plays the lute. And it's like, that's the funny part, was like where it's like the tiefling character's like, so what do you bring to this? You make plans? He's like, yeah, I make the plan, and when the plan A fails, then I make plan B, and then it's plan C. and so TV's like, oh, so you make plans that fail. How is that helpful? And he's like, I don't make plans that fail. I have content. And Michelle Rodriguez jumps in. And is just like, he plays the lute, and he brings us all together in song, and he revivifies the downtrodden party when we get our butt kicked by the Stone Goblin or the Enderman from Minecraft or whatever fantasy thing we're fighting. And the TV's like, and he's like, no, that's entirely irrelevant. It doesn't matter that I play the lute, but it actually does matter that he plays the lute because it lends credence to my Pinkie Pie theory. You see what I'm saying? It does matter that he plays the lute. He plays the lute, which is part of it. Actually, I'm kind of only half joking because when he plays the lute and sings the songs, it is part of what does bring morale back to some of the party members. In particular, Hoga is like they sing these songs, and then it does have an impact on the rest of the team, right? Because if a team does fall apart, he's kind of like, I guess in the A team he'd be like he is kind of like the team leader sort of character, because if the team does fall apart, because there are parts where the team almost falls apart, right? And if your team falls apart, then you have no world saving, then the world ends, I suppose, right? So the charisma statistic does matter in a lot of role-playing games in certain circumstances, and not just when you want to have sex with the sexy dark elf character or the sexy minotaur character, which whatever you want to do, that's up to you. The charisma, anyway, so I think that's an interesting spin, because you would expect, like, if this was 1990, the woman character would be knitting the mittens, kind of fighting, either as an aside, another female character. That's another thing is Michelle Rodriguez is fighting all the male characters and female characters. She's fighting soldiers. She's fighting orcs. She's fighting half-orc soldiers. She's fighting dragons. She fights everything, right? Whereas, like, if it was a 90s movie or an early 90s movie, Michelle Rodriguez would get, like, one fight scene while Vin Diesel or Keanu Reeves or someone else is fighting the main fighting. Michelle Rodriguez would do, like, one or two fight scenes with another female character on the side. We just watched... What did we just watch? Oh, we watched Sylvester Stallone. I'm speaking of Chris Stallone. I'm joking. His name is Sylvester Stallone. Everyone's name is Chris. What are you talking about? What's your name? Sylvester. Bad example. Sylvester Stallone's Judge Dredd movie called Judge Dredd. It just popped into my head because we just watched this movie. But just to go on this, since I'm on the gender role breaking topic. In Judge Dredd, Sylvester Stallone does most of the fighting, the shooting, the gunning, the blowing shit up, the being a hard ass. Now Carl Urban in the Naughties remake, and Carl Urban is this weird guy who insists on being canon to the lore, being 100% faithful, like a unhinged zealot to the canon of comic book movies, so much that he never takes his helmet off, and ever in this entire show. And Carl Carbon from Neofeud is also partially based on Carl Urban in some senses. But anyway, let me let go of all those asides and get back to the point. Let me be like the end of, there's a moral of part of the story of Dungeons and Dragons, the movie, Honor Among Thieves, which is that you have to learn to let things go, like dragon butterflies or whatever they're trying to hunt in the beginning of the movie. And so I'm going to let that aside go. Judge Dredd's character is doing most of the fighting in this 90s action movie. I know it's not fantasy. It just popped into my head because we recently watched it. And so he is, and he's the male character, and then there is another judge that is Judge Dredd, Judge Hershey, who gives Judge Dredd Hershey's kisses. That's her entire role. She sticks chocolate in his mouth. She does give him a kiss like towards the end of the movie because she is the romantic love interest. So coming back to the gender roles, Judge Hershey in this show she does do fighting, but just usually she's doing fighting against other female characters as an aside, like kind of like incidentally, and then also is just being kissing and falling in love with the main dude, right? And so that's just a random example of a 90s action movie, or just a pre 20 teens and later action movie. And that's what you expect, right? And that's not, I'm not trying to criticize this movie. That's just how movies were. I mean, it doesn't matter which one you're really talking about. And so in Dungeons and Dragons, Michelle Rodriguez is doing basically all of the vast majority of the hand-to-hand fighting. Like I said, with all these variety of weapons, she's doing all of it against men, women, creatures, animals, everything, right? And I mean, her character is the tank. I mean, it's actually kind of like Hedon in that sense, because it was based on a main character is a fighting non-man character. So and so that would be like the expected. And last stream when I made the video that was centered around Barbie, I talked about gender roles and the problems with them. And so Michelle Rodriguez's character is, and the role being not just like what you biologically are based as. It's actually, you see how like actually the race things where characteristics are all inherent and essential to your DNA and your skin tone, your face shape, and where exactly on the planet you're from. It's like people are this way because of their race, or because of their what they're biologically, have in terms of their private parts, etc. And this is just kind of like really, it can be a very destructive way of looking at reality, because A, it's not true. B, it leads to things like misogyny, patriarchy, and also racism, and justifies things like colonialism and by extension capitalism, et cetera, et cetera. So the way that Michelle Rodriguez's character is kind of like and I would say like there's like it's really pronounced because of how how much of a not a fighter Chris Pine, strong-jawed, white, blue-eyed, extreme Caucasoid, extreme Angloid man is, right? You expect him to be that guy, but he's totally not. He's totally not. He's knitting, music playing. All we need is a scene with him doing his nails, and then we're like we're almost there, and then we have a trans Chris Pine in the next movie. I'm not saying that he is a character, that is. But it's like, the roles that you're expecting the people to be playing is very much reversed, and so it doesn't and it's not like it's because sometimes it can be like written in a way that it's like, oh, it's the badass. It's like there's like a Joss Whedon sort of character. There's a Joss Whedon late 90s, early 90s sort of badass kick-ass chick, but it's kind of like written by somebody who is, or I mean, created by somebody who is it's missing something in particular. It's definitely like, I want cookies because I want cookies because I'm so progressive, because I have strong women inside of my movies, even though they kind of like have very thin characters. That's another thing, is Michelle Rodriguez's character does have other aspects to her personality, and like she has her own things going on, right? Aside from like, she does a lot of the fighting, but then she also like has a partner, and it's a 2-hour movie. I can see why it's 2 hours, but they do have lots of, each character is 3-dimensional, and they have like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is not even all the main characters. There's like 6 or 7 main characters, and every single one of them is like very much a 3-dimensional character. And so Michelle Rodriguez has that scene where she's like going back to her ex-husband, who she was kind of forced to leave her tribe and then had to go with this I think he's like a halfling, I believe. What is Bradley Cooper's character in D&D movie? I see. Yeah, Andela is as one of our trans comrades. Is I'm sure would be happy to be represented possibly in a future fantasy movie where that is a thing that happens. I can't think of a trans character in any of the D&D or Lord of the Rings movies off the top of my head. Oh, I see. Holly's like, oh, are you talking about my nails? Yeah, this. Speaking of trans characters, let me just do a quick aside. If you would like to see myself in all red, I've also changed as I said, I myself am somebody, speaking of gender role hacking, I am a non-binary, and in my native Hawaiian culture, I am Mahu, which is a similar to a two-spirit person in indigenous cultures. And so I recently changed my profile picture, and also yeah, that's me in all red, not just my nails. So yeah, so I think a lot of people are crying about it right now, and also just being horny but also mad at the same time, and they can die that way. And other people are. Thank you very much for supporting this this picture. And also Holly did take that picture, so thanks a lot to Holly as well for taking that. Oh, here's another one. Also, these shoes are a little bit too narrow for me. I could probably walk in them, but these shoes were 6 inch. Was it 4.5? It was like 4.5 to 5 inch heels. So that was I'm 6'2" in them, and so that was a lot of fun for people to look at who are into very tall girls, and also hurt my foot a bit. But one day I'll. The front of the shoe is a little bit too tight. But anyways, well, thank you very much, Della, Victio, and Holly. Yeah, thanks. I will take this moment to bask in the glow of my validation of my my hot femme appearance. But that is a thing that I'm being more public about because for a lot of reasons. Number one, I just want to. Number two, the United States is also trying to pass anti-LGBTQ plus bills and has always been trying to stop LGBTQ plus people like myself, as well as queer people and indigenous people, and especially queer indigenous people, from existing. And so even more so, I feel like I need to be even more visible and present in that. And also, I just look very good. So also that. So I am giving fashion tips. Just if you want more fashion tips about how to hack your genders, and if you want to borrow some genders from myself, you can go to the Silver Spook blockbuster video of genders is what I'm calling it. That is the Silver Spook Glams account, where you can follow me and learn all about. This is actually, speaking of fantasy, I was trying to cosplay this orc demon tiefling character in this game that I'm playing called Head, and so this is me working on that. So and so I have fantasy. There's me with an axe, and I'm blue, and so that's medieval. This is my Michelle Rodriguez from Dungeons and Dragons movie sort of character. I have medieval fashion. I've got Blade Runner fashion. That's me inside of a cyberpunk adventure game, Neofeud, being my own booth babe. I've got all the fashions. I've got all the gender hacking for you. This is me being Ruby Gloom, I think. But grown up, not a child, obviously. And that's me being Lilu from The Fifth Element. And so we got, and then this is me being the Queen of Hell, basically, which is a based cool place where Lil Nas hangs out. So yeah, and then but yeah, anyway, so if you want to learn more about that and more about, also I talk more specifically about gender stuff and my own journey to figuring out who I am after the United States banned made queerness a bad thing, and Mahu was literally used as a slur when I was growing up, to accepting that as who I am, as well as just generally indigenous issues and all kind of other stuff and how this all plays together. And that's me lying down. I've never taken a picture lying down in my entire life, so that was fun. Also, happy HRT anniversary to Della as well. And anyways, I should probably move forward. I'll be showing off more of that later on in the evening Twitch stream where I've been like just dressing up in that. Oh, I'm in the wrong place right now. Oh, also, I just want to say, I didn't actually take like Holly commented like this. If you want boobs, I can tell you how to get them. If you you can also HRT will do these such things. Estrogen will do such things. But also, there's a way to do this thing that I don't know. Holly was like this. I don't know how you this looks like very much like that's all me going on right there. So I can also give you tips about that, but you have to hang out later on in the Twitch stream. Anyways, there you go. You just HRT'd into some breasts, indeed. Anyways, so the gender hacking stuff is inside of Dungeons and Dragons. I'm not saying that like that's what they're doing, but like that's in the show. I'm not saying like this was what they wanted to do was to do that, but that is what's in the show, right? And so you have a female character that's doing a lot of the fighting, and then also is dating. Or is the ex of Bradley Cooper before I digression myself with my own digression into an infinite tangent series. Bradley Cooper's character in the D&D movie is Marleman, and Marleman is a mild-mannered and extremely short ex-husband of what does he have a race? Because like the D&D, they have all their halflings. Is he a halfling or he's not a hobbit, right? I don't think he can be one. What was Bradley Cooper? Yeah. Wait. Bradley Cooper's character race, is he an ace? He's a halfling? Yeah. Bradley Cooper shrunk down to roughly half his normal size because Holga's ex-husband is, in fact, a halfling. For those who have not rolled for initiative, I want to get a picture of that because that part is really funny. Here is adorable little Bradley Cooper. Look at it. Like he is like, again, look at the doorknob. Okay, look at the door handle. He is like shorter than it, right? Bradley Cooper shrunk down to half his normal size because Holga's ex-husband is in fact a halfling. So literally, by the rules of D&D, he's gonna be half the height of a person, approximately, right? For those who have not rolled for initiative, Dungeons & Dragons lore, a halfling is a race of people in the universe, and they do not grow much larger than 3 feet tall. They're half the size of humans. Blah 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 blah. Holga's because Holga is a big, strong barbarian who can single-handedly take down 7 guards without blinking, but it's also funny because that tiny, adorable man is played by charming, affable Bradley Cooper. Cooper answers his ex-wife's knock at the door with a huge smile on his face and gazes up at her looming form. Marleman greets Holga warmly, welcomes her in, and tells her he's been gardening recently. Just imagine tiny Bradley Cooper in his garden. Tiny Bradley Cooper in his garden. Shout out to the shorties, all the short boys in the house, all the short guys in the house. Bradley Cooper's D&D character in the movie. Is there not? I'm see if there's any other pictures of him. Marleman. Does anybody have it? Nobody has any pictures except that one site. There he is. Here's him sitting in his chair. Look at him. Look at him in his chair. Don't you just want to like take him home? Take little Bradley Cooper home. And give him a little halfling house and just like, feed him his own garden tomatoes or something. He's the short king. This is Bradley Cooper, the short king. He looks kind of like what's his face? who plays freaking Frodo? Dude, he was at the writer's strike, I think. You know the original Lord of the Rings, the Hobbits. What's his name? Yeah, what's his name? Everybody knows his name. He played. I'm blanking his name because that's what happens to my brain when I try to think of famous people's names. Huckleberry Finn, famous star that played Frodo Baggins. And I can't even freaking remember it. What's his name? Now I gotta Google that. Elijah Wood. I kept on hearing Elijah Page or Elliot Wood in my head, and I'm like, it's neither of those. It's not Elliot Wood. It's Elliot Page. It's Elijah Page. Anyway, he looks like Elijah Wood, doesn't he? Kind of look like Elijah Wood, except like, you know, he looks like Elijah Wood, but like with like a wider mouth and a little more disheveled. Anyway, so the point is that like so all of the characters that are kind of like that are either like a short little adorable guy that's like going out with the ass kicking warrior barbarian girl, and he has another and he's the ex of Michelle Rodriguez's character, and she kind of comes to get closer with him, and then he has another really big, possibly bigger than Michelle Rodriguez's character as his new wife. His new partner is, I can't remember what her name was. And so anyway, that was really, anyway. But you know, but it's also like, it's not like it's like Michelle Rodriguez's character also, it's cute and adorable, but they also like have like a real actual relationship. And then he's like, you know, I wanted to be your partner and your husband, but you know, you couldn't stop disappearing and drinking, and like, you know, you couldn't like deal with having been removed, kicked out of your tribe. And like, and he's like, I feel really bad. I feel bad for you, but also like, I can't be the, you know, I can't be the partner, the life partner of someone, you know, who is in such a state and is disappearing at all hours. So it's which is kind of like a thing that you would. It's also like a lot of these things are kind of like reversal of a lot of the normal character types in multiple ways, but they're also still three-dimensional characters, right? With like believable lives. They're not just like, oh, and there's an ass-kicking chick that, you know, Joss Whedon is hot for, then that's it. You know, it's kind of like, right? And they like don't have anything going on other than that. Like, everybody has multiple layers of things going on. I could talk about every one of the within 2 hours of an action movie. That's like a lot. That's a very short. That's actually that's actually an example of what it is. When we talk about like why writers are important and good writing should be paid appropriately and paid well, is because like they in a 2 hour movie. Now it's a little bit longer, but 2 hours is not. Movies are real short. Usually action movies, there's not a lot of character. It's just like, hey, punch, kick, swing, beat up some shit, and then you're out of there, right? But it's a 2 hour Hollywood movie, and it's like you have 6 or 7 fully rounded out characters, where the way that it's written is that all of the character, like in the middle of a fight scene, you'll have like dropping something about, oh, and I want to go back and see my ex. We're gonna go back after this. And then there's comedy in between that where Chris Pine's all like, well, you know, I mean, isn't like, you know, being told, isn't this kind of closure, you know, where you basically send a letter where I never want to see you again. And then, you know, so there's character, there's comedy, there's also the plots moving forward and the actions happening all simultaneously, like in ways that nothing ever gets boring or there's too much of one or the other. So that's all in the writing, you know what I'm saying? Well, it's, you know, obviously the actors and the director have to kind of all bring that to life and to screen, but a lot of that is in the writing, where like this is how the scenes are we're going to artfully and efficiently kind of like bring in each of these elements so that you get complete characters. You're never like, you know, you're never like not entertained at any point, but you're also like getting the character, getting the action, getting the story, getting the background, the world history, and you're getting the comedy stuff all, at a rate that you. And when the writing is really good, you don't notice it because you're too busy like enjoying the movie. But when you go back and think about it, if you think about it, not that a lot of people do, they just like give me the next movie, give me the next content, right? And so, I mean, and this is I'm talking obviously in the middle of the writer's strike, where Hollywood writers are like being paid, like some of them are being paid like barely enough to eat lunch, right? In the total, when you minus the fees for the lawyers and the agents and all this stuff, they're like at the poverty level, especially in LA, which is incredibly expensive. So the writers deserve to be paid to craft these stories and entertainment that people are constantly watching, consuming, and then thinking about and enjoying all the time. So anyway, I thought I would just throw that one in there as a PSA for the striking worker. Also, just generally, everyone should unionize, fuck capitalism, organize all your workplaces and strike in a general strike and get rid of this ridiculous system that's killing everything, including the planet. So so yeah. Anyway, back to this though. So in the spellbinding spectacle part, it's already 1, so we're gonna get out of here very soon. But yeah, so I think that's pretty good on the gender hacking stuff. Yeah. So back onto the bigger picture. So I think Hugh Grant's character, which I haven't talked about that much. Hugh Grant, Dungeons and Dragons. He is playing a very smarmy. He's playing a very Hugh Granty character. He's a total a nasty dickhead. His character is Forge, which is George with an F. Let me see if I get an image of him. Yeah, and his character is basically the con guy, and he's literally a con man. Like he even says, "I'm a con man. Why would you listen to a con man? I'm Hugh Grant." He is working with the team at one point, betrays the team, is the reason why they get kind of some of them go to prison, right? And they have to break out of prison, and he is working with, as I was talking about, that the evil place where the evil lich, more Sauron-like character is trying to dominate the world, and so actually I shouldn't give too much away, but let's just say like that he is conspiring with dark forces, including the dark source, and that happens earlier on. You see that I have this amazing dark sorceress who like has armies of undead and creepy evil mind controlled people around her doing fighting, and so he kind of like ends up working to, obviously for himself. He gets money, he gets power, he gets rewarded with riches, and there's like there's not on the face of it a lot of direct politics in D&D, but I think in the movie, but like actually like if you look closely, it is a pretty good metaphor for a lot of things that are happening in the world, such as Forge what he really wants is just he wants all the money and all the wealth, and he also wants, he's like, oh, I never really discovered that like I liked children and wanted children until I was taking care of your child, because he is the one who is now taking care of Chris Pine's kid after Chris Pine goes to prison, and Hugh Grant has been poisoning Chris Pine's kid against him that whole time, saying, oh, your daddy went to prison because he just wanted riches and then he got caught, and your daddy's just a terrible person and I'm the only one that care about you. So he's just an absolute scoundrel, a total liar. He's just such a Western politician. He's like a total Democrat or Republican or a British PM or a British, MP. He just lie. All he does is lie. It's like all he does all day is lie, and then snivel and scheme and rip other people off and take other people's things, including their children, and turn them into his own lied to children. And then is trying to scheme to get all the money that he possibly can, working with dark forces that want to control the entire world. But what he cares about number one is himself. He's the embodiment of selfish Anglo-Saxon capitalism, right? He just wants all the money. He schemes to, like, they have this huge stadium. Let me see if I have one with him in the stadium. Dungeons and Dragons, the yeah, where they play these games with this. It's like the Maze Runner games. It's like life or death. It's like Roman gladiator spectacle games crossed with the Maze Runner, with Hugh Grant as the game runner. You know, it's like the Grand Master on that planet of slaves in Thor Ragnarok. You know, I'm trying to get a picture with the whole stadium thing. Yeah, well, you can kind of see it here, right? And so he's conspiring, you know, in order to get all of the people in one place for reasons. And also he's trying to take all of the money of all of the people that are arriving. He's going to take all of the money and all of the wealth that are stored in a vault, and he's going to run away with it all. So he's collaborating with dark forces in order to get. I mean, it's kind of like the politicians of the United States collaborating with, taking lobbying phone calls from Lockheed Martin, from the big tech, from Wall Street banks, from Silicon Valley banks. Says, I'll give you $2 million if you just like sign this bill that's going to push trillions of all of the U.S. dollars that could fix roads, repair houses, pay for healthcare, and infrastructure, and just stick it inside of bailing out my bank or giving it to this corporation or that, right? So Hugh Grant is the Western politician, which is just an absolutely corrupt, money grubbing, selfish prick, or the Wall Street CEO. He's like the total embodiment of that, and he's constantly lying, as they all do, and so and presenting them with this spectacle. But he also has a very high charisma role, right? His character is really good at talking to people, and as I said before, eloquent. I said that whole. I have my another shout out for some of my previous videos. He's very good at eloquent bullshit, which is what is Western culture. And that was in my AI video, which is why where is that one? I think I uploaded an actual video of that. Yeah, the problems with AI, artificial intelligence. Western AIs produce eloquent BS, which is all that the West ever produces. Is history and culture and news and fiction and nonfiction is all eloquent BS. Like, that's why I put that as my screenshot. And so Hugh Grant is the eloquent, and ChatGPT is just an automated Western culture emitter. It just pushes out eloquent bullshit that is meaningless, sounds good and is nice, but is bullshit. For what, right? Why is there mass, artificial intelligence? Sorry, I'm in the wrong place. Why is there so much mass bullshit, lying? I mean, Hollywood is actually part of that as well. It keeps the masses distracted, and keeps pushing imperial propaganda. Not so much this movie, but mostly like Avengers, mostly like Marvel, and also historically that's been the role of Hollywood. Is the Mickey Mouse ears, and the Disney especially, was to project goodness of the U.S. empire, Captain America, a symbol of the United States, while the U.S. is actually doing some of the most heinous things, backing all of the wars, all of the imperialism, global capitalism, all the genocide everywhere. And so this kind of I have this thread, and I don't know where it is. I'm doing a bad job explaining this point at this moment, but shoot, I forgot what it is. Yeah. Anyways, so the spectacle part of what I wanted to say was that so Hugh Grant's character, where he's keeping everyone entertained, being very charming, getting everyone to do what he kind of wants, even though what he's saying is meaningless. It's banter, it's small talk, it's bullshit. And then he's lying. Everyone's giving him money. Everyone's letting him run the town, right? He's backed by the most horrible dark forces. He's backed by the literal. He's backed by the Lich Kings of, the neocons, and he's backed by the Brzezinski Grand Chessboard Project for New American Century shitheads who want global domination. Him making all the money to sell out everyone, right? Because everyone is going to die and be possessed and turned into Sauron zombies, basically, and he's gonna run away with what? Lots of money. It's like looking at the United States. The politicians are running away with billions of dollars, right? They're puppets in Afghanistan. $169 million is what Ghani, the U.S. puppet politician, when he got into a plane at a Kabul airport with the CIA's help, he had $170 million in a briefcase. He's just spilling it all over the tarmac, right? And so he takes all the money. Right? That's not even in a Western country. That's just somebody who works with the world's Lich Kings as the U.S. capitalist imperialist superpower. He takes all the money, gets away, and instead of in Hugh Grant's character is getting away on a boat full of golden goblets, chalices, and diamonds, and emeralds, and scepters of fire, and gauntlets of +2 to grifting, right? And British crown jewels of +10 to colonialism, like King Charles crown jewels that he stole from Africa, especially South Africa and India, and and so they're running away with the wealth all the time, right? Characters like this, they're running away with that wealth while everyone else is dying and being killed and suffering and impoverished, right? Everything's falling apart. Austerity is through the roof. COVID is not handled. People are getting shot in the street, strangled in the buses for being black and poor, or just poor. Fascists are taking over everything. And the people like this are making money, right? The New York Times is behind the fascists and the TERFs like J.K. Rowling, right? And the people that are pulling their strings are all working together. And so it's selfish money and super egocentric people combined with people who just want absolute power. So it's money and power and all of that together. And that it actually is in the movie if you're looking closely. And the team is trying to steal from people like this and give it to everybody. They're not trying to, but later on, Mr. I'm not fun to talk to. I'm ancient and on the spectrum. There's nothing wrong with that, but I don't understand sarcasm and irony, and my parlance comes from 300 BC, right? And that Mr. Serious Dude is like, you have to promise on your family's name that you will redistribute the wealth. You, Chris Pine, will not inherit your white colonial property and money and assets and 401k and stocks. You will not take your white man stonks and selfishly spend it on cruises and mansions. You will redistribute all of your colonial wealth to Silver Spook and other indigenous and queer and BIPOC and actual left people. You have to give me all your money. But you know what I'm saying? So it's like you have to take from these rich people and you have to not keep it for yourself, right? Because he was the D&D party were taking, but they were taking without harming people and for people who didn't care about it, but they're giving it to themselves, right? And then he was like, and actually in the beginning, Chris Pine's character is the reason why he starts getting into the trouble is because he and his wife, he is not financially, economically doing very good. Like they're having soup. They're having stone soup. Or they're having like stone soup with a packet of tomato ketchup. It's like there's nothing in the soup. So they're like, even though he's like, it's kind of like being a writer in Hollywood, Like it's kind of like being Quinta Brunson, or it's kind of like being, one of the writers for these shows that you love, or Dante, even at times Dante Basco, or even at times Anna Kendrick, who was like, I was an actor in 2 Twilight movies, and I was literally buying everything on credit cards, and I couldn't afford to eat food for parts of. I was like literally eating like, if I was eating ramen while shooting some movies because I was paid so little. I couldn't even afford to go to hotels where events were happening that I was supposed to be at, despite being in 2 mega movies. And so it's kind of like, it's actually kind of interesting. Where it's like, even people that you think are successful, right? And they have to kind of like act and look successful, right? Even models, like I recently did a whole, on one of the Twitch streams, I talked about like misconceptions about modeling, which is also a very exploitative career, where you look really cool and fashionable, but a lot of times the models like are being abused in so many ways, including sexually, and also can't afford to eat a lot of the time and are buying things on credit and are basically in poverty. But they look amazing. They're taking pictures in mansions. They're taking pictures on golden banisters, like selling a Prada or whatever they were wearing. But they're in poverty. They're like literally in poverty, looking like they're in millionaire, billionaire clothing. They look like they're in riches, but they live in rags actually. So that's this kind of weird paradox that I thought that was interesting at the very beginning of the beginning of this. I'm jumping into a few asides, but like Chris Pine's character looks like he should be doing well, but they're not doing that well. And so he starts to steal because he can't afford to eat, or his family's not eating enough. So he starts to do the thievering, right? He's like, and then I looked at, there was this plate of all of this gold sitting in front of my face one day, and then I took some of it. So if you look at it that way, there is a certain amount of, it's very much, you gotta be, it's not, you could absolutely just watch this show and completely just not take any of that. It's just entertaining. It's just Dungeons and Dragons raid and action comedy, but I mean, if you look closely at it, it's actually like, the reason why people get into these heists is because they can't afford to live. It's not like, it's like, what would be really cool is if I just started like killing, like, no, like, it's kind of like in the same way that's kind of like, it's a little bit updated from the average fantasy campaign. It's not like, what would be really cool if I went around the world and killed people and took all this stuff as a murder hobo, which is what it means to be a fantasy role-playing game protagonist, right? It's just like, I started taking stuff, getting loot and treasure because I couldn't afford to live. It's kind of like being black in Oakland and then nicking a pint of milk from a 7-Eleven because your children are starving, like in 2023, and then the police kill you or throw you in prison forever, right? Except, it's not that. It's not that real because it's a fantasy action movie. But I mean, it's like the reason why people go into such things as taking, right, is because it's not again, it kind of goes back to the thing of like, are the people from the bad, are the people from the place that is not us, that is maybe we see them as bad, right? Are orcs bad because of something biologically essential to their genetics, right? And the way that you answer that question kind of matters. Not kind of matter, it absolutely matters. Even though people don't notice that, people watch that movie and they come away, but it kind of matters. It does absolutely matter in the long, big picture, because then because it suggests that, people are bad because people could be black people. This is a thing, right? This is what a lot of the racism is. Black people deserve to be killed, and then people get, because they're bad, because look, they're in the ghetto, they just like it. There were entire theses that were written, university degrees were had in the 1900s to this very day, writing biology textbooks, biology white papers, sociology white papers about why black people are just genetically and culturally, but especially genetically, inclined to slavery. People made entire university careers at Oxford, New York University, you name it, right? Take your pick. There are people at those universities who wrote science about how black people are born to be as a lesser race amongst the races. And Asians also are inferior, and they are inherently prone to crime. And their skull shape is part of that, The phrenology is just one branch of what passes science, right? And Asians are inherently deceitful, degenerate, liars, and malicious, and they have no morals, and all these native savages are fallen, evil communist people that we have to exterminate for manifesting our destiny, right? And so similarly, right? And poor people are also inherently not good people. And there's something genetic to them. Like in Britain, they actually called the Cockney were another race of people. They're literally right down the street from them, right? They're living like a quarter mile from them. But the people, this is Anglo-Saxons, right? This is just what it's in the history. The Cockney are a different race, and that's why they can't speak properly. Not because they don't have access to quality education like upper crust royalty of the British palace, but it's because they're genetically inferior, and they're like basically the same skin tone, face shape. They're not any different, but there was an entire genetic description for people in the poorer parts of Britain that suggested they were biologically inferior, genetically inferior to Queen Victoria, King Charles's, etc., and the lords and the ladies and the aristocracy. And then anyway, so poverty being tied to your biology, right? Like the reason why people are when the black homeless person was murdered by a white man, and the Marine, Marines are professional murderers for empire. That's all they do. The U.S. military is a genocide factory for global imperialism and profiteering. So when an ex-Marine white man kills a black person, or actually a lot of the country and a lot of the virtually all the newspapers are going. They all rephrasing it as a menace on the subway, was restrained and then died. You see how that's different from white man murders black poor person on subway, or just murders person on subway. How about that? But it matters that it's black. If it was a white person, they would have a harder time writing that story, right? And so and people are like, how can people be so just blasé? How can people just accept that that's what happened? Well, if you demonize through your movies, your TV shows, your news media, and the nightly news and everything else, people in poverty, and you worship wealth, and you say that people that are poor and also not white are lesser, inferior, like fundamentally to the other people because either they didn't try hard enough and that's their own moral failing and they're also genetic failing, or they're just genetically inferior, which is either one, doesn't really matter. They're tied together all in the end of the day. And that they're poor because of their fault, right? Then that's what justifies this reality. Whereas, and so in this movie, it's kind of like the people, even people that are like, that look like they're well-to-do, they're actually not well-to-do, not necessarily because of something that they've done, but because the entire system that is set up is set to reward the people who already have a lot with more. That's what feudalism. Like, feudalism is proto-capitalism, Euro-feudalism. Ask Yanis Varoufakis, an actual person from Europe, an actual, actually trying to be a left person. He's like, Europe today is like, it's worse than vassals. But the vassals were not in a good situation. They were in an exploitative relationship with the lords, right? Which is what it was. It was lords the serfs didn't have all the gold and the riches and all the food and all the money and all the stuff to party with. They were fighting and dying in all the wars of the Henry VIII's and the French Bourbon kings and queens, and they were all, if some people starved, which they did frequently, people starving to death and dying from disease and dying from all of these terrible, preventable things, were the poor serfs in what the feudal medieval history of Europe that fantasy like Lord of the Rings and Dungeons and Dragons by extension, etc., are based upon. And there's not really any difference. And so that's where I made a game called Neofeud, which points out that the feudal Europe and modern capitalist Europe are not any really ultimately different. They just have kind of changed the total amount of planetary. The world is Europe's serf, vassalized, one might say. I'm glad that the West is talking about other countries. Some of the West is talking about Europe being US's vassal, Japan, other countries being vassals of the empire, right? Because it's ultimately feudal relationships, which are unequal relationships, and capitalism is feudalism with more. It's like the feudal system, but expanded and focusing more specifically on the capital accumulation rather than more focusing on the bloodline. Although these all play together, like racism, capitalism, colonialism, feudalism, all come together, and they're all going to go together. Anyway, that's the Silver Spook political diatribe for number 3. But anyway, all that to say that, so I think that that's where highlighting that the it's not just I wanted to have a fun gallivant around the universe, around the fantasy world. It's like I started doing this because out of a need. I started doing this out of a need or some kind of justification. I mean, they didn't need to put that in there. They could have just had, and then the spy, the bard, the warrior, the magician, and the druid decided to go and kill bad people because they were bad. But do you see how it's different, right? And then the elf, the sword. I mean, think of Lord of the Rings. Think of your favorite fantasy. The elf, the sorcerer, the knight. They all went off into the bad place that is not the West, and it's very full of dark people that speak a different language, and it's Afro-Asiatic coded. And then they killed lots of those orcs, and they killed all of those biologically inferior and evil NPCs in the bad place that is the East and the South. And then they killed the lead bad guy, which is Vladimir Putin. Oh, I'm sorry, it was Sauron. And then they killed Xi Jinping. Oh, I'm sorry, it was what's his name? Vladimir Harkonnen. And then they killed everyone that was east of West Germany, and then the world got better. You see how that narrative, it just, whatever you think about, I'm not saying that everybody east of West Germany is just like angels, right? But to be like, we have to go there and stop them because we're the garden and we have to turn that jungle into us, right? That attitude is imbued in your story by just some slight changes to the writing, actually, it's the writing and how you tell the story. What details go into it alter that entire perspective, right? Where it's like we're on this adventure. We're gonna go on an adventure either way because people are not gonna sit their butt down for 2 hours and eat popcorn and laugh and cry and ooh and ah unless there's some spectacle and axes and blood and dragons shooting fire and shit, right? There has to be some fun, But the way that you put the axes in the fire, the context around how you put the axes in the fire and the magic missiles and the druids and funny little 3-foot tall Bradley Coopers, the way that you put the context around that changes so much about like kind of like what is the undergirdings and like why people are doing things, why people are the way that they are, and also and by extension like. It's not to say that like that's gonna save America as if Dungeons and Dragons just everybody watches it. No, but it's like it's part of an entire system, an entire full spectrum dominance requires full spectrum resistance is another way to put it. Because full spectrum dominance is a conception and a methodology within the Imperial Core to maintain the real world's actual Zaztam planetary world domination, which is what these people want, actually, right? And so, in that sense, like it is actually about that's what I meant by spellbinding spectacle, which is that like both the people who are under like the people that are watching the spectacle in the arena that Hugh Grant is telling his bullshit stories in. This is like Democratic vote. This is like people's in the so-called U.S. democracy listening to Joe Biden give some speech, or Democrat or Republican, or Fox News or CNN, giving some speech about all the changes we're going to make. And, hey, vote for me one more time. We're going to get them student loans forgiven, and we're going to have that health care, everybody. I am the pro-union president. Right? You just watch this bullshit, right? Have you not? Or I guess people can't stand the bullshit artists anymore. But that's a problem. You have to make sure the bullshit artists have to stay entertaining. Like, the infotainment has to stay infotainment. Otherwise, people might realize that you live in actual Mordor, which is the United States. And your head is the actual Sauron, which is the imperial capitalist class and the billionaires that all work together to maintain that such a system, like Elon. So this guy is actually a perfect representation. It's perfect representation of the United States. And everyone's entertained by the spectacle of his shitty movies that are not going to be written. And behind him is this guy who is sending out imperial propaganda through all of the TV channels and making sure everyone is ready to fight another 25 proxy wars to stop the spread of communism and to make sure that we spend all of our money on an $800 billion / $2 trillion, if you add up all the non-listed, not officially earmarked military money on the military-industrial complex to maintain global capitalist hegemony under the United States, primacy. So that this collaboration between the neocon and the power-hungry imperial power seekers and the selfish, money-grubbing, lying, cheating, stealing dollar seekers, and how they have a there is a revolving door between them, and they often work interchangeably in an oligarchy, is the perfect representation of the Western reality, in fact. So Dungeons and Dragons is like more on point than most TV shows. They're not necessarily putting. I'm reading that in there, but I mean, relative to the average newscast or what you hear out of Western media, they're so inaccurate, And then Dungeons and Dragons is absolutely on the head. Like that's just the United States, right? And Europe as well, and all the G7. So. The spectacle, like, so in this stadium, Hugh Grant is trying to get everyone entertained by watching these games where people are literally dying, like Hunger Games, except it's the Maze Runner Hunger Games, where people are running through a maze being chased by displacer beasts and eyes of the beholder and dragons and shit. Watching people die, it's like watching black people get killed on subways and get their necks knelt on, right? And everyone's watching this spectacle. What do we do when all these black people die? What do we do with all these the trans people? There's too many drag queens. You know, and so the spectacle keeps all the Americans entertained and the Westerners entertained, right? While right, watching people get fucking killed, and they're going, what do we do? We should you didn't vote Republican or Democrat. You didn't vote Democrat hard enough, you know. And while that spectacle is going on, and everyone is wrapped in that, they're all being thrown to the wolves and being killed by the governments and sent into wars by their governments to the benefit of the money people and the power people colluding. And the spectacle is very important. And that's why another point that I make is that, like, actually, I don't really give a shit if another Hollywood movie is ever made in a bigger perspective, because ultimately the purpose of Hollywood and all cinema is to as I said previously, is to maintain the soft hegemonic power of the United States, to distract the masses and to make billions of dollars for, of course, the capitalist $30 billion a year Disney and Sony and all those big corporations that don't pay their writers and actors shit. Right? And that whole industry that maintains the spectacle, if it, goes, and we don't have another Hollywood ever again, well, maybe at least you'll have the end of global capital. You have a better chance of the United States actually having a democracy someday. And people, the unequal power structure is falling apart because people won't be so distracted and brainwashed, right, by their TV and by their movies and their video games by extension, that they might, end that entire system. But I think that, I'm just saying. Also, I don't care if Disney. I made a video about Lilo and Stitch. I don't care if Lilo and Stitch's character is ultimately. I mean, the most important thing is not whether Lilo and Nani are light skin or dark skin or whatever. That's not what matters, right? That's also a lot of the spectacle, really. What matters is that the United States stops illegally occupying Hawaii. Disney takes its $150 million resorts and stops displacing Native Hawaiians and stops blowing up our lands and poisoning our water with military jet fuel and literally killing us in Hawaii and sending us all off and committing genocide in Hawaii. I don't care about your shitty Disney spectacle. I don't want to play Maze Runner games in Hawaii while I'm watching your shitty Lilo and Stitch remakes. Stop culturally appropriating Hawaiian culture, you fucking racist white Hollywood shitheads. Anyway, that's a stupid speak, right? So stop. Disney is Hugh Grant. It's a bunch of money grubbing shitheads making disgusting movies that are very entertaining, that ultimately propagate terrible messages like America's good and capitalism's good, that's Iron Man, and America's good, that's Captain America. And everyone should go. The CIA loves Africa. That was Black Panther. Right? They absolutely don't. They're committing fucking war crimes in Sudan. Victoria Nuland just went to Sudan and made sure, and then a month later, people started dying in mass. So Hollywood should never make any movies ever again, and definitely not Disney. That's actually my real take. Writers and actors and directors can make movies. Jordan Peele can make some movies, and indigenous BIPOC people should have their own funded studios. There should be a Native Hawaiian, sovereign Hawaii funded Hawaii studio that makes actual Hawaiian movies about actual Hawaiian stories, like the ones that I write, or other Native Hawaiians actually write. But that's not what Disney's making. Disney's making white man written, a white savior bullshit like Lilo and Stitch. So that's the kind of shows and TV that you really want. What I really think, that's what I actually think. But that's, let me tone it down a little bit. So yeah, no, it's fucked. Disney falls apart and explodes with Silicon Valley Bank, the U.S. financial system, which is all exploding, by the way. 3 of the 4 biggest banks to ever go bankrupt in history have all blown up in the last 2 months. Did you know that? So the U.S. is actually exploding while we're talking about this. So in that sense, where's Mr. Red Smoke Man? In that sense, right? In that sense, God damn it, I got so many tabs. You know what I'm saying? The red smoke blowing neocon imperialists and Wall Street, money grubbists, they are all exploding right now. They are falling apart. The U.S. empire is falling apart. The Western colonialism and capitalism is falling apart. Their banks are all going bankrupt. And every time Biden or the head of a central bank of the United States or anyone like that comes out on TV and says everything's fine, you should take all your money out of every U.S. bank that you can, every 401k, all your stocks, anything that's in the Western financial system at all. You should get it all out because my parents just, you need to know this. My parents lost half of their entire life savings of 40, 50 years of working their ass off as teachers, which are not paid very much. They lost half of their entire life savings in 2 weeks or less during the 08-09 financial crisis. And they lost another like 20, 30, 40% of it. They lost almost everything that they ever, and my aunt also. Everyone that I know who were like Gen X boomers, they lost almost all the money that they had basically in the span of weeks to months. And then maybe in the next year or two, they lost more of it. Any money that you have in any Western bank, and it's all blowing up right now. As I said, the three biggest bank failures have happened in the last 2 months. The U.S. has printed more money in the last 2 years than it's printed in the 250 years of its existence. Any money that you have will absolutely be stolen from you the second they can get away with it. Anything you have invested anywhere, 401k, PayPal, it doesn't matter, anywhere. You got to have some money in some places, but anything that you have electronically stored in any digital financial infrastructure anywhere, bank, 401k, mutual fund, stock, even crypto ultimately in the longer run, but certainly any corporate, government, or otherwise, NGO, nonprofit, doesn't fucking matter. Consider it all gone right now, or get it. You should be getting it out. You should have already gotten it out. You shouldn't have never put it in. If you want to ask my personal opinion, but anything that you have is going to be vaporized. They have done it, and they'll do it again. They did it in the 30s. They confiscated gold historically, and they confiscated huge amounts of money. And when the stock market crashes, it is not the billionaire and millionaire class. It is not the Vecnas and the Zastams and their insider trading White House and U.S. Congress and British and French government politicians that are going to take the hit. They all have their money all where it's supposed to be. The 99% of people, you lose everything, and that's what's going to happen. So you think about that. I'm just saying. That's just a PSA because if there's anything the Silver Spook brand is about, it's about not bullshitting people. So now, of course, like if I find out that, oh, you know what, everything's gonna be hunky dory, leave all your money in that, whatever you have it in, just leave it all in there. I mean, of course, like having physical stuff, having like physical, if you physically have a lamp or a desk or a whatever you have, that's why Silver Spook is because in the Terminus Machina video game, I have a character who literally has silver because all other currencies and stocks and mutual funds collapse because he is an AI programmer. He is a AI programmer for high frequency algorithmic trading algorithms at Goldman Sachs, and then he knows what's gonna happen. Then he quits that job and everything falls apart, and that's how he's not completely starving. And that is what happened in 08-09, by the way. So that's a total aside though, but similarly, and that's where AI comes into play as well, is that and this will be I gotta really finish this up, but so the actual I do want to talk briefly about that because I think that's important. Somebody actually brought up, and I brought this up on a previous stream, but the one about AI, where did I put that? I know I posted it over here, but I can't remember where I put it. Sorry, I'm like, is it this one? No. Shit. I'm trying to find, I had this little thread that I made about Terminus Machina, and then I was trying to get the, shit. Okay. But basically, there's a lot of talk about AI. AI, if I just scroll this, I'm going to find it. AI is part of what is also on the table with the writers' negotiations, right? Coming back to that, which is that yes, it's the corporations like Disney, etc., are not paying their writers what they're worth. They are basically giving them they're blaming it on, we don't know how streaming works or some bullshit, right? um, where is it? Not yeah, it was around this one, not that one. Yeah. So it's important for folks to remember that AI is and so AI is a part of it because AI it's suggested that by some people that AI will be able to replace all the writers, right? We don't need writers. We'll just put AI in the writing room for Abbott Elementary. We don't need the writers for the next movie or the next TV show. We don't need writers for any of those because AI will do it for us, right? And it's important for people to remember that AI is a racist worker credit erasure and eloquent BS, which is all of Western culture and history recombinator. It just regurgitates the past in a fire hose of watered down schlock form of quote unquote content from passable enough to keep the proletariat people distracted so rich white capitalist dudes can profit harder while everything, including the planet, dies. The AI we have is not digital ultra smart human beings. That's Elon Musk BS copium from badly playing Deus Ex 2,000 times and then misunderstanding it. And so the organizing and striking that the writers are doing is very important right now because if people believe, right, as I said this previously on the stream, I know, but if people believe that the AI, if they believe the eloquent bullshit, right, that people like this are spreading, which is that everyone just invest in AI and it'll solve all the problems. It's kind of like everyone put your money in NFTs and that is going to save your life savings. Oh, what we're going to do is just give all the money to capitalists in Silicon Valley. What are they doing? Blowing up Silicon Valley Bank. Elon not making actually cars that function. What is he doing? Not actually doing anything like he said, right? Not actually producing based on the amount of money that was invested. Running away with money. Doing corporate buybacks. Literally taking your invested money, buying back their own stock and then putting that into their own net worths. That's what the Silicon Valley Bank, AI investor bros now, the NFT people, all tech companies, basically all U.S. corporations are just money laundering facilities to a large extent, including the military industrial complex that makes F-35s that don't work, wasting tens of billions of dollars. But where does the money go? Into people like his hands, right? So AI is just the next scam vehicle. AI is the next spectacle gladiatorial event in which all of your money and all of your resources and all of your everything is going to be thrown into. And workers will be paid less. And again, all the average people who are not the capitalist class will be screwed out of this. And so that's why, and now is the time that people have to strike because, importantly, strikes actually work. Since the WGA went on strike, studios have lost almost $10 billion in value, enough to fund every ask the writers made for 25 years. So in fact, if the studios had just given the writers what they wanted, 3% is what they want. 3% is nothing. If you want my opinion, the writers and the actors and all the actual producers of the content should take 100%. All of Hollywood should just be corporatized and decapitalized, if that was possible. But I know that that's not what's gonna happen. But every single film and show and movie should not have any capitalist involved at all. It should all be cooperative, like Silver Spoon Games is. But the West is full of bullshit artists and corrupt, broken, unhealed ways for 2,000 years. So I don't think they're going to figure this out in the next year. So the writers should strike for the next year or 10. Just never write for Hollywood again. Just write for some other actual based entity. Like write indigenous and BIPOC stories outside of Hollywood. There is Hollywood pointed out, we can get British and international content into our content farms, right? Well, I mean, at the same time, the international writers should also support, right? In the same way that the 150 African underpaid global South people that are breaking their back to maintain the actual moderation for ChatGPT and Facebook are talking about unionizing, there should be international writers, tech workers, programmers, AI designers, actors, industrial workers, all workers should just all simultaneously strike internationally. I think that that's the general global strike. That's actually a plot point in Terminus Machina, by the way, and Neofeud. Before the U.S. and its imperial militaries have fully automated AI-powered drones that can hit anyone at any time, and robots that they're not even human cops. They just come and mow you down. They don't have qualms like morality and the possibility of human decency. But anyway, that's a science fictional conceit of the Silver Spoon Games. But importantly, strikes are working. They do work. They are kicking. They're actually making huge losses. And it's important. This writer strike is a $10 billion loss to all of Hollywood the Hollywood industrial complex, which is just a propaganda arm for the U.S. empire and Wall Street and the Pentagon. But the $10 billion is coming at a time in which the United States empire and its dollar hegemony is collapsing. The U.S. banks are collapsing, and all of this is comorbid with, they're all impacting each other in a downward spiral, which is great because the U.S. empire shouldn't exist. There shouldn't be any empires, period, that are exploiting and killing and absorbing wealth into its core, right? Right? Unless you like empire, and then in that case, I guess you can go die in your downward spiral. So, but this is gonna continue this process, actually, the more not just writers, but the more everyone that strikes, the more likely that there will be a rapid implosion of the entire capitalist system, which would be awesome. And then we'll have international multipolar and many socialist and former colonized peoples in various paths along their development that will take a new, that will build a new, not perfect world, but it will just be a multipolar, and BRICS is a part of that. That's just a monetary union, but that's a lot of those countries are part of a new international system, which will have to meet many challenges. Pandemics like COVID, that's not over, by the way. The U.S. is, and Canada and Britain, they pretend like it's over. There's other countries that are in BRICS that are acknowledging at least that we still have to deal with problems from these, and we have to still take precautions. So it just, COVID is still a problem. Climate change is still a problem. Economic inequality, there's still social problems all over. I mean, I'm an LGBTQ person, and I know that there's countries that they're in a different path in that process. But I know that imperialism and the U.S. is the number one force for pushing right and anti-LGBTQ forces and elements around the world, including in Uganda, where the U.S. said U.S. should invade Uganda and take over it because Uganda has anti-LGBTQ laws, where simultaneously it's U.S. conservative Christian organizations that pushed and funded all the anti-LGBTQ plus laws in Uganda. So so again, it's like the world is not. So people brought up, well, Silver Spook, there's bad countries in the world. Yeah, there's problems in the world, but the biggest problem is we have imperial, colonial, white supremacist hangers-on liches like the United States and the Anglo-Saxons in Europe and the NATOs that are the root of so much of all these planetary problems, which could be solved. That imperial, capitalist, colonial problems and racist problems do not go away just because U.S. planetary horrific hegemony goes away. It just means that problem goes away, endless war goes away, the power of horrific U.S.-led capitalism goes away. The ability, any one country dominating the others enables so much more abuse than wouldn't be there just by not having dominance. There'll still be problems in countries. There'll be elements where there's exploitation economically. There might be places that don't have all the LGBTQ+ rights. There will still be ethnic, historical differences in a lot of places. They don't disappear. But the U.S. puts gasoline on all the existing fires and magnifies them by so many fold, right? Literally, the planet cannot survive environmentally. The U.S. military-industrial complex U.S. military is the number one carbon consumer. It is the number, and all the wars it starts altogether are the number one vector of climate and environmental destruction. So just on climate alone, it is not possible for any empire, let alone the U.S. empire, to survive any longer. And so for those reasons, so that's really what I think. That's really what is Mordor. Mordor is just imperial Western primacy, and the neocon and imperialists and the people in D.C., Wall Street, and Silicon Valley that continue to think that they can get away with all this nonsense, that are actually this character. And that is the highest DEF CON of Silver Spook that we will go, because it's already 2. Yeah. So, spread that idea around. Global working, I mean, all of France is already in a huge, near, it's just on fire constantly. Not that it's good, but there's huge, let's say, people that are not working and then doing other things to disrupt all activity. Which is, Bolivia had a huge 85% general strike before they kicked out U.S. imperial, Zaztam-like, and the local Hugh Grant puppets, in the Jeanine Áñez administration that were backed by the U.S. empire. And it was a huge mass strike that pushed those people out just a few years ago, right? And now they're on the path towards building multipolarity with a plurinational, indigenous-led socialist state in Bolivia. All the countries that have strong socialist and socialist parties and communist parties and indigenous-led resistances inside of them that are successful and leading that country, they have better LGBTQ plus rights across the board, and they're moving in the direction of more LGBTQ plus rights, more ends to the ethnic and racial problems in those countries, more poverty alleviation than not. Wherever they are at, right? They are moving in that direction. Whereas the U.S., Europe, all the capitalist, so-called advanced democracies, they're falling into literal freaking hell from their high places, but they're rapidly sliding downward. So, very important for people to remember. And that's nothing to do with Dungeons and Dragons, really. But, but you know, so the spellbinding and the spectacle, I hope that kind of makes sense. And so propaganda is also very important to that. And that's why, you know, I think that we should really have more Dungeons and Dragons like movies that are just, you know, either just having fun, you know, just having fun. And don't try to touch that stuff if you're not going to do it good. Don't try to touch those topics. But if you do, you know, I hope that if we have these movies that they start to, you know, intersperse them or like have in these kind of all the things that I've kind of talked about, where it's like not essentializing poverty to people as their individual problems, and not essentializing different places from other parts of the world, other cultures, other countries, other civilizations as fundamentally inherently evil and bad. Not having three-dimensionality of different countries. Let's put it that way, right? It's another way to think about it. In the same way, we don't want cookie cutter one-dimensional characters. We shouldn't also want, you know, that kind of thing in the world, even though that is a staple of a lot of fantasy. We need to have more truthful representations of how wars actually have played out in the world historically, and it's not because people from, you know, Asia and Africa just biologically are bad and we have to get rid of them. But that's the explanation that a lot of these fantasy movies give. So we have to counter that with this kind of thing. And also the gender norms, which is that only the straight cis white dudes do all the fighting, like Superman and Captain America, etc. And the women do all the knitting and the playing the music, and you know, occasionally, you know, trying not to break a nail while fighting. Chris Pine is the one trying not to break a nail while fighting, so that he can show off his beautiful red and black nail polish through his fingerless knitted fingerless gloves, you know. And so that's the gender part of that. And then, so I think I've touched everything, and more fat dragons, you know, more fat #more fat dragons, you know, more thick dragons. You know, we need more thick dragons sliding around, unable to. It's kind of funny because they're also unable to. Either gasoline comes out or a spark comes out, but they don't come out at the same time. So the dragon can't ignite the dragon's fire. It's a misfiring throat, and so that actually becomes a point and click adventure game plot point. It's very point and click adventure gamey. Like, how do we get ourselves out of escape the room problem? You have a dragon that spews the fumes that are flammable, but no fire. How do you get out of the cave that you're stuck in as you're drowning to death? Very, very fun point and click adventure game problems. Anyways, that will be it for the Dungeons and Dragons. It's a fun movie. Go watch it. The last half an hour or hour is me going off about other things, but in the beginning I talk a lot more about the movie. Don't forget, Neofeud is a video game on Steam that is supports everything that we do here. Also, it is a game that is on. It is also if you like cyberpunk adventure games, it's not really fantasy, but it is cyberpunk adventure game with a team, a ragtag team of adventuring, unlikely companions, including a noble of sorts, although it's a princess instead of Chris Pine, knitting, music playing Chris Pine, Carl Carbon, a humanoid cyborg, and a ex-con drug dealing robot come together to stop a floating palace full of British royalty. I'm sorry, capitalist CEOs and rich douchebags. If you like Neofeud and you have a second to leave, even a very short review is massively appreciated if you could leave one, because it does help the game to get recognized in the Steam algorithm. Also, you can get Neofeud on itch and on Steam. It is on itch.io for Windows, Mac, and Linux. It is also on sale there. So if you don't have a lot of money, this is a place you can get it. We're not on writer strike because I don't work with the Hollywood entities. So, but I am still writing because I'm not. But although I do support that. So if you'd like to support the continued writing and creation of Neofeud 2, a non-capitalist, indigenous-owned business here on the U.S.-occupied country of Hawaii, you can also buy Neofeud to do that on itch.io. And also you can get games like Decolonators, Indigistar, and Pigeon with Gun, which is a game where you play a pigeon with a hat and a gun fighting gajillionaires, F-16 pilots, liberal, heart-stealing politicians, and other fun things like that. You can also get Woman, which is a book by Holly, who was raised in right-wing evangelical Protestant Christianity, and is critiques that culture through a story of the Bible told from the perspective of Mary about these her experiences, and it is free. Or you can also get this while giving us some money through a donation if you want to do that. Don't forget, also you can support us through Patreon at patreon.com/Neofeud. We do have a Ko-fi. Somebody asked me, do I have Venmo? I do not have Venmo, but I do have Ko-fi. We have Ko-fi here, so you can support us through Ko-fi with a direct support, or Patreon. When you become a Patreon supporter, you do get access to behind the scenes on what we're working on, including in terms of games and other things, the Silver Spook Discord, and Silver Spook University, which is over 1,000 hours of video and text content organized by topics for your educational and entertainment consumption. You can also follow at Silver Spook Games at octodon.social or at Silver Spook Games at mastodon.social. If you want to see me being hot, you can follow me at Silver Spook Guy, and also my personal takes on things at Silver Spook Guy on Twitter, as well as on at Silver Spook Games on Twitter for the games related stuff, and we have Instagram and Facebook. Terminus C is a game called Terminus Cyberstar, that is a low-poly cyberpunk immersive sim in the vein of games like Deus Ex and System Shock 2. It is still being created. I am the content director and lead writer, and it is being produced by a small team of other folks. And if you want to keep up on that, you can be sure to follow at Terminus C or join the Discord there. And Holly is, of course, my partner. Holly, none of these Hollies. Holly at the Tech Fairy is a poet, educator, moderator, and married to myself, product producer and manager with Kate Nix TV. There's a stream every week on a Tuesday. This week they're doing Holly, I forget what exactly they're doing, but they're doing something this Tuesday. Soon they will be doing a music open mic night, which I will be trying to submit something to be a part of that. But if you want to follow this monthly interactive variety special that Holly puts together, you can follow Holly there, and if you want, you can also follow Kate Nix TV. And also, Holly is a parent here, along with myself, of two Keiki, an educator as well, and also is doing important sharing of information, and of course, always doing important support for us here at the Silver Spook Cooperative of a variety of types, and writing books. And here's another picture of us. This is me with in my animated demonic form. That's my tiefling self with a lot of red and black. When I'm usually wearing red and black. I think those are my best colors. So, anyways, follow Holly, and don't forget to I should not forget to thank all these people. Thanks very much for your support, and yeah, thanks Big Deal for watching. Yeah, open mic night is exciting. Thanks Holly for moderating. Good to see Victor and Della and everyone else who popped in there. Sorry, I don't look at the chat as much. I'm gonna try to look at the chat more in the Twitch one later on. But thank you all of you patrons, because without your support, there might not be any Silver Spook anythings. So thank you so much, and until next time, keep your demon scales polished, keep your dragon breath flaming, and your crisp pine flaming, and knitting, and singing music, and crack some heads with Michelle Rodriguez's characters. and be excellent to each other. All right. See you later if you want to come by later to the Silver Spook Inn where we're having mead.